do you or your kids, or have you or your kids, discovered Geometry Dash yet?
Geometry Dash? I have no idea what you're talking about.
Is that like Number Munchers? I don't know.
No, it's a game. So this is like, my kid has been obsessed with this game for a number of months now, and it's one of those games that like spreads to every child's friend. The basic gameplay, it's kind of like Flappy Bird, where you're like, jumping up and down, but taken to the most ridiculous extreme possible, to the point where it's this huge world. The game itself, not only does it have a million levels that have just huge amounts of complexity, tons of visual distractions. It's like crack for your brain if your brain works a certain way. Like, it's just this huge amount of stuff on screen, all for this basically, this like instant death kind of frustrating hardcore kind of jumping game. And what's interesting about it, so there's also a level editor in it. And so, of course, my kid has gotten into making his own levels, and you can submit your levels. It's all right in the game. And what I love about this thing, this is not an ad for Geometry Dash. What I love about this thing is that there are no in-app purchases, as far as I can tell. You pay $2 for the game, and you just have it, and that's it.
Impossible.
Yeah, and the guy, I think he does very well based on the number of people who play it, and it's been around for a long time. But it's still going strong. Like, my kid tells me there's like 100 levels added all like every day or something by people, and they get featured every day, and like there's and it's a huge community. There's YouTubers playing it, talking about all that. That's presumably how we found it. Like, it is kind of a joy to me to see this game succeeding in the way it does, because it's succeeding in the way that iOS games used to back before everything was an in-app purchase garbage fest. It's just a game that you pay for and you have it, and there's stuff you can like level up to in the game. You can get better suits or skins or whatever, but you do that by playing the game. And like just by like beating levels. It's not by you don't spend $10 on a coin pack to get a treasure loot chest to possibly get it's like, it's none of that garbage. It's just a game that you play and you get stuff in the game, and you can make stuff in the game. It's this whole thing, and it just seems so like nice and wholesome that it's this rare. And I mean, this is not a new game. I'm sure anyone out there who's an iOS gamer has probably gotten tired of this game 10 years ago. But as somebody who has only seen it recently, I'm very impressed by just how nice of a little world this game has created. And like when you see some of the levels that are made, the amount of work and complexity and artistry that go into it is quite something. I can't play the game for crap. Like this is the kind of game, like, you play it, you jump a few times, you die, you jump a few times again, you die again. And I'm like, all right, I want to throw the iPad out the window. Like I don't have the kind of personality to play this kind of game.
Give it the tip. She finished Celeste.
Yeah, right. But yeah, this is, I'm very impressed by Geometry Dash and the world around it. And it's pretty cool. So if you have kids with iPads, check it out.
The developer should talk to the current Unity CEO, former EA CEO, who recently said that if you don't think about monetization during the creative process, you are a, quote, effing idiot. So Geometry Dash developer, sorry, the Unity CEO doesn't like you.
Well, EA deserved that guy.
Yeah, seriously.
Well, no, but Unity's got him now. He's the CEO of Unity. We talked about, 3D engines last time. Oh, well.
I'm curious, like, so my kid's also trying to get into, coding and game creation, and we talked about this probably a year ago. I got a bunch of recommendations from listeners. I don't think he was quite ready for those at the time. We tried a few. Nothing really stuck, but he did recently finish the first, batch of Swift Playgrounds, and wants to jump into making a very simple game now. However, he's still young. I think attention span is still a very challenging thing. And he suggested trying Unity because he's heard from YouTubers that you can do that. And then I heard on the talk show this week, John had on, I forget the guy's name, the guy who made the Apple Store time machine thing called Shop Different, which is amazing. I went through it a few days ago. Like, wow. That's a whole thing. Like, I was very impressed with that. Just like, most of them I didn't, I was kind of more impressed academically, but then when I went to the Fifth Avenue, New York Glass Cube recreation, I've been to that store a lot during that time period that it's represented, and it felt like going there again. It was an incredible recreation. Like, it really did nail exactly how it felt, and to walk through that and be like, I've been here before. Like, I remember this when it looked like this. That was really quite something. Anyway, the creator of that mentioned that he made it in Unity and that he's not much of a programmer, but it was apparently easy to just like import stuff. I don't even know, I know that Unity is a game engine. other than that, I don't know anything about Unity. I couldn't pick out a lineup.
It's like a full IDE. It's like a full IDE for a 3D environment. So you could do like modeling, texturing, arranging geometry. It's still hard to do. It's still complicated. Like I remember last time you were looking into like Pulp, what do you call it?
There's the Playdate thing. And then we looked into oh god, I forget the names of all these things. The like little like. Oh God, Pico something, Pico 8.
But the Pulp you can do all on the web, and it's programming optional. You're basically dragging tiles around and setting up rules, and then you can dive into the code if you want to.
Yeah. So anyway, I'm looking at. We're gonna look back into stuff like that again, but Unity I think is one of the things that we that's on the table for like. He's motivated to do it, and what's good about that is that if he runs into questions or problems, he can just look up the answer on YouTube, which is how he finds information anyway.
Oh no, I can give you one better. He can ask me because
what?
Do you want to know? Wait, not because I don't know crap about Unity or 3D programming, but do you know what Unity scripting engine is written using? C#, baby. It's all coming back.
Really?
So he can ask. Oh yeah. How's that make you feel, Marco? Feel good? Do you need a shower now?
So he just needs to learn Java, and he basically knows it, right?
Oh, sick burn, but mostly true. Honestly, I haven't written C# in 10, 15 years, something like that. 10 years? No, maybe less than that. I don't know. It's been a while, though, and I've probably forgotten everything I once knew. There was a brief window of time that I was a pretty good C# developer, but that was many years ago. But I don't know. I don't think those muscles have entirely atrophied quite yet.
Anyway, so that's going to be an area that we're looking into. But anyway, all this is to say, Geometry Dash, thumbs up.
This is news to me. I'll have to check this out.
I love there's no in-app purchases. Like it's just a game that like there was this brief period, really, relatively now in retrospect, this brief period back in from like 2008 when the apps were launched until through I would say the first year or two of the iPad, so like 2010 and 2011. Remember that first batch of iPad games was also this way. It was they were really good games that had no in-app purchases, or at least very few, because I think in-app purchase, I don't think it was available till iOS 5, I think.
Oh, I don't remember.
And the iPad launched with iOS 3.2. So I think there was a 2-year span there. But anyway, the first year or two of the iPad basically predated the use of in-app purchase widespread in games. And the games that came out during like those early iPad years were great. They were so much fun. You had like the first versions of Field Runners, Plants vs. Zombies, the plane landing game. What was that called? Flight Control. There were so many great, amazing games, and due to a number of unfortunate factors, most of them you can't even play anymore. Even if you wanted to.
Was Cut the Rope in that era? I know it eventually had all in-app purchases, but I wonder if Cut the Rope predated it and they added it later.
I don't think so. Cut the Rope, I think, was later. At least I didn't hear about it till well into the in-app purchase era. But those early iPad games were so good, and that era is just gone. And most of those games are gone, and they've all been either totally killed, and their companies don't even exist anymore, or they got acquired forever ago by somebody like EA and shut down, and or they've been remade as modern sequels that are just in-app purchase casino garbage games. It's just such a shame because those first games were so fun. And that's why something like Geometry Dash comes along, or rather sticks around. And it's just so refreshing to see that now when you're used to today. Like if somebody recommends an iOS game to me today, I usually won't even play it because I know it's going to be full of in-app purchase garbage. Like unless it's a Zach Gage game, I'm usually out. But to see something like this that's still doing well and that has the old model is both rare and refreshing.
Geometry Dash kind of looks like a combination of an Infinite Runner and a VVVVVV for kids.
I never got into that one.
What?
Six Vs. So it's a very intentionally primitive looking, extremely difficult, unforgiving platformy jumping game. I
have not heard of this either.
And it reminded me a little bit of Geometry Dash, but I only played Geometry Dash for 2 seconds, but it seems like it's mostly left to right, whereas 6Vs is all over the place.
No, it's also all over the place. There's different modes that turn you into different, objects with different movement characteristics. You can reverse, you can speed up, you can slow down. There's all sorts of craziness in there. Trust me.
You should show Adam this the V's game, which I'm not going to say the name of again because if he likes Geometry Dash, he might like this game as well. I mean, I think this relies on a little bit of nostalgia that he obviously doesn't have, but it is similarly punishing mechanics. And you should get him into like FromSoft games eventually, like the Souls games when he's older. He likes Unforgiven games.
Yeah, he very much does. And it's kind of rhythm based because the levels have music, and usually the jumps that you need to do will correspond to beats in the music. Mm-hmm. So there's that aspect, and the music is very electronic style, which is right up his alley. So that also helps. So it's a whole picture thing that really, hits him. He loves it, and I love that it's so kind of wholesome and not in-app purchase garbage fest, and so it's wonderful. We are sponsored this week by Instabug. Building and maintaining mobile apps is not simple. Bugs, crashes, and performance issues can be a nightmare for developers like me. So what if you could not only detect and dissect these issues, but also get a holistic understanding of your app's performance? With Instabug, you can. Through comprehensive bug and crash reports, performance monitoring, and real-time user feedback, Instabug gives you the visibility you need to build top-quality apps. You can observe and fix issues like UI hangs, slow apps and screen loads, network failures, and anything else that may be affecting your user experience. You can get a quick read on their impact on your users and access all of the granular data relevant to the issue in seconds, so you can prioritize, assign, and debug before your next update is released. It only takes a minute to integrate Instabug's SDK into your app, and it fits right into your workflow, with integration for Jira, Slack, Trello, GitHub, Zendesk, and many more. Stop flying blind in your mobile app issues. Try Instabug today. Go to instabug.com and get the visibility you need to start delivering superior app performance and better user experience. Once again, that's instabug.com to get started. Thank you so much to Instabug for sponsoring our show.
All right, let's do some follow-up. John, you promised us last week, or we assigned homework last week, that you should compare the M1 MacBook Air speakers and the M2 MacBook Air speakers. Have you done your homework, John, that we should never have assigned you?
I have. Both speakers are not good.
I told you.
Goes without saying. Like, I was comparing them because I honestly had never listened to them. Because, like I said, these are my son's laptops, and he uses headphones all the time. And maybe I hear like the system beep if I'm ever doing something. That's about it. And I'm not that makes it difficult to compare which one is less bad. But I think pretty definitively the M1 MacBook Air is better. They both sound bad, but
The old one is better?
yes. You can try it yourself. I don't have particularly attuned ears, but like it just felt like the M2 was even more inside a tin can than the M1. I played music on them, right? And I was playing the same song on both of them, and I'd play one and I'd play the other and play one and play the other. And it's like, oh, they're both really bad. But it was just, I just feel like the M1 is better. I mean, it could be that because the speakers are like up firing instead of bouncing off the screen, that could be the entirety of the difference. But to my ears, the M1 MacBook Air sounded better.
Wow.
Not by a lot. They're both bad. And it was really difficult for me to tell. And I would not play music on either one. That's for sure.
It's funny every time that I use my MacBook Pro as a laptop, because I don't do that often. It definitely happens, but it's not often that I'm going and doing work and sitting down and doing something serious on my MacBook Pro and using it as it is, not connected to screens and all sorts of other paraphernalia. And today I went to my beloved Ultra-Wideband park bench, as I described a few weeks ago. And actually, as a quick aside, yesterday, we went to a museum and then went to lunch in quasi downtown Richmond. And I was sitting at lunch and I noticed I was on Ultra-Wideband, and I did a speed test. Over 3 gigabits down. Over 3. That's 3 times faster than my own connection. It still blows my mind. I don't know what I would ever do with this, but it's still cool that it exists. Technology, baby. Anyway, so I was at my beloved Ultra-Wideband park bench earlier today, and it occurred to me, the screen on these MacBook Pros is really freaking good. And although I only use the speakers for but a moment because it's rude to do that in public, the speakers on the MacBook Pro, all things considered, are pretty darn good too. So I'm not saying that like the MacBook Air is wrong for most people or for really everyone, including probably me. It probably is sufficient for my needs for the most part. But no, these computers are really quite spectacular, and I sometimes forget how amazing they are.
I will say the speaker difference between, again, as I mentioned last week, between the MacBook Air and the 14-inch MacBook Pro, it's a different league. It's not. It's not even close. You would think, oh, they made it 1 inch bigger. The speaker's a little bit better. No, totally different ball game. Not even close. I love the MacBook Air. Trust me, I still love the MacBook Air. But the speakers are really god awful compared to the larger ones. So yeah, it's no comparison. Not even close.
All right, moving along. I was reminded via an anonymous contributor that you can set up a catch-all email on a lot of services, but including my beloved Fastmail, www.caselist.com/fastmail. But anyways, I forget what the context for this was, but we were talking about something last week that brought this on.
You're setting up like the single-use email addresses, and you had to go to Fastmail and click and make one, and then you go use it.
Yes, thank you. A couple things here. First of all, you can set up a catch-all email, which is a little bit weird the way they have you set it up, but it works exactly right. And so what I can do is I can sign up for, I'm making this up, but I could sign up for Instagram and have the email address I give Instagram @caselist.com. And then Fastmail, and again, this isn't unique to Fastmail, but Fastmail or whatever will forward that to my actual email address. And so this way I can tell where it came from. Google and Gmail people would often do this where you would do username plus service. So it would be like John plus Instagram @Syracuse.com or whatever the case may be. And that also works on Fastmail. I'm pretty darn sure it does. But you can set up a catch-all, which makes this sort of thing pretty neat as well, which is something worth considering. Also, I went back and forth with a few people on Twitter in a happy way, and I was reminded that in 1Password 8, which is the Electron one, which has its whole, you have some issues with that when you go that route. But I had been on 1Password 7 because I had been waiting for the stick to force me into 1Password 8. But eventually they gave me a carrot in the last 24 hours, and they said, oh, by the way, in 1Password 8 and only 1Password 8, you can do the whole Fastmail masked email or whatever they call it, the hidden email address thing, one-time use email address thing. You can do that automatically within 1Password. So what that means is you're signing up for a new service, say Instagram, using the web on your computer, and you can use 1Password to just automatically generate a happy.farts@caselist.com or whatever they come up with in order to get a email that isn't going to be something useful and that you can kill pretty easily. And you can do that all through 1Password with 1Password 8, which is worth considering if you happen to be a Fastmail user.
That email wildcarding thing really maximizes your surface area for spam, though. I mean, if they have any kind of auto thing that's trying like well-known addresses at every domain or whatever, you're going to get all that spam because you can put any word in front of the @ sign and it will all go to your one email address.
I don't know if they still do this, but Fastmail in their control panel to enable the catch-all email address, they even used to warn you, like, warning, you will get a lot of spam. And I actually used that mode for a number of years. It turned, I kept getting more and more spam. And I'm like, you know what, this is stupid. And so what I did was I searched my inbox or sorted it somehow. I forget how I did this to basically find like the only aliases I ever actually used for anything, turned off the catch-all alias, and just made that list of all the aliases that I actually needed, and just stopped, using new ones anywhere. And it was a much better situation spam wise. Also, can I just say, from somebody who deals with customers and their email logins for both my app that I'm trying so hard to not have anybody use emails, but some people still insist, and from our wonderful members who we love, atp.fm/join, nerds who think they're being clever and they use these custom aliases, and so it'll have like overcast at mydomain.whatever, or ATP membership at mydomain.whatever. You always forget. And then you write in, and then we have to find your account. It's too clever for your own good most of the time. So it's not, it's something that like, it causes headaches for everybody, for you and for the services you use. And the reality is like, yeah, you know what? Great. You're going to know if somebody sells your email address. Great. Everyone sells your email address all the time. It's already out there. Who cares? Like the gain that you're getting with that you think you're getting with that, I don't think is worth all of the downsides.
That's an interesting point for sure. So last week was one of those weeks where I thought we were really clear on the things we were talking about and asking about. And apparently either nobody heard us or we didn't clarify quickly enough, because we got a mountain of feedback where everyone was explaining to us, oh, did you know you can turn off the notifications for devices and AirTags and things when you leave them behind? And I thought that John especially, and I thought I was too, but particularly John, I thought was very clear that, yes, we're aware that that is a thing that can happen, but we don't want to permanently turn it off for like a vacation home or a hotel room or something like that. We just want to maybe turn it off for a few days. And that was the real complaint we had. But half of the internet wrote in to tell us, no, this is what you need to do. But for the record, John, if you did want to do that slightly dangerous thing of turning off the notifications for a particular location forever, how do you go about doing that?
Yeah, Steve Stutz gave concise instructions if you want to know how to do it. So you open the Find My app, you tap on Devices, which is down at the bottom, and then you tap on the device you want to deal with, and then you scroll down and under the heading Notifications, tap the Notify When Left Behind section. And what you'll probably see in that section for any of your devices is that it says Notify When Left Behind, and it will say that it's on, probably, and it will say Except at one location. And you'll be like, wait a second, did I already use this feature? What is the one location that it's supposed to not notify? It says like Notify Left Behind, except at this one place. What is that one place, Casey?
Home.
That's right. Your home is already there. So it's the home is explicitly put there. So you can add a second location or a third or a fourth or a fifth, but your home, if you have your HomeKit stuff set up, is already there. That's why every time you leave your house, you don't get notified that you left all your stuff behind.
Indeed. And then Paul Squires writes, on the Find My alerts from a hotel, in general, I want to keep those on. I may be going to dinner, but I could also be going to an office, so I want those devices with me. Also, I definitely want them on for checkout day. This is an extremely succinct summary of what John and I were trying to say.
Yeah, that's the tricky part about this feature, because like, I don't want it to keep bothering me unless I'm going to the office and I do want them. And by the way, when I check out, I want it too. So it's not easy to pull this off. It's not as simple as we were saying in the show, like, I'm going to be here for a week and just turn them off until a week later, right? Because if you are somewhere for work, you want it on every day that you're going to the office, but not on the days that you're not. But you definitely want it on for checkout days, so you know if you left stuff behind. Hard problem to solve.
And then with regard to HomeKit automation and locations, so the context here is my Apple TV at the beach house deciding that was my permanent home, which was a little wonky. So we had a few different pieces of feedback about this, but in particular, Derek Martin writes, I recently had my HomeKit home self-identify as two properties at once, the new house we just bought and are in the process of moving into, and the old house that we've had for a while and are in the process of leaving. Whenever I arrived at or left either location, HomeKit would offer to run my location-based automations. You get one guess as to how I fix this. Yes, that's right. I had to go into my contact and rename the old house to something other than home, leaving just the new house named home, and then all of my automations worked properly again. Is there anything to indicate this in the UI? No. Did I figure it out by pure fluke on my first try? Yes. So Derek got very lucky there. Additionally, Jim Brune writes, if you take your Apple TV outside your home and don't want the offsite device to become the default hub, and this is exactly what I did when I got home, I just didn't know to do this in advance. Jim writes, go to Settings, AirPlay and HomeKit, and under the My Home setting, switch from connected to disabled. Then the hub will transfer to another device at your home. And like I said, this is what I did to kind of fix everything once I was back home, but it wasn't until I was already, the damage had already been done that I had thought to do this. Also, with regard to the Apple TV, Torb Lund Miranda writes, we've tried many different Apple TV photo apps, Flickr, Plex, and some others. Apple Photos is far and away the one that's the best for looking at photos on Apple TV. It loads photos fast, and as long as it's your own library, they load in high quality, completely sharp over 4K, not over compressed, etc. I don't know a single other Photos app for Apple TV that does this well. It not being able to handle John's photo library notwithstanding, but let's be real, it's John with his enormous photo library that has the weird way of dealing with photos, not Casey. Boom! Got him. Anyway, I'd love to know if there are any others that are good enough. For the record, I did not put this in the show notes, but I was very happy when I read this email.
I don't understand what I'm doing is weird. I'm using Apple's solution in the boring way that Apple says. Take pictures, put them in your photo library. It's nothing weird about it.
Honestly, I think I actually agree with you, but I was so happy to see somebody defend me, so I'll take the victory nonetheless.
Yeah, well, so when I saw this, I'm like, okay, well, I complained about the Apple TV Photos thing every few years. I should look at it again to see how it's doing. So I loaded it up on my, Apple TV and ran into a couple of issues. Since the last time I did it, I think they changed like the way user accounts work on Apple TV. I think it used to be that there was no accounts and you just put which Apple ID do you want to get your photos from and you sign into it or whatever. But now there are accounts. And the main user account is mine, and that has all the home screen sync stuff, and everything is set up like that. And I said, okay, I'll just add a user account for my wife. Why? Because we're still not over the hump of iOS 16 and Ventura and everything, and so there's no shared family photo library. So I have to use her Apple ID because she's got the family photo library. So I made an account for her. We created an account with her Apple ID. It's signed in or whatever. But it seems like the Photos app only shows the photos for the default user, which is me. and not her. If you go into her settings, it shows a bunch of stuff about purchases and so on and so forth, but it doesn't have a section for iCloud Photo Library. So I couldn't even see her iCloud Photo Library unless I was willing to, I guess, maybe delete my account or make her the default user or something like that. And I wasn't willing to do that for the purpose of this test. So instead, I use my Apple ID and my comparatively dinky photo library, which consists only of photos I've taken on my phone. So it's not the 150,000 photo family library. It's just my phone photos, which is way smaller than that. And sure enough, most of them are thumbnails and they take forever to load. And if you were trying to use it to actually show something, you'd just be staring at, squares with question marks in them for just minutes and minutes while everyone uncomfortably shifted on the couch saying, so are we going to see some pictures? And the answer is, no, you're probably not. Like 1 or 2 thumbnails will load and maybe you can wait. It just doesn't do what you want it to do, which is you want everyone to sit down and you want to click things on the remote and say, oh, look, pictures. And then you look at them and smile and go to the next one. Nope. I don't know what the problem is. I don't know why it has a hard time loading them. I have a super fast internet connection. It's on the same network via Ethernet of all the other devices that have these photos on them. It just doesn't do the job. And like I said, it's not because it was 150,000 photos. It was a fraction of that. So I don't know what the deal is, but still no good.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I don't know of any particular answers for this. I'm sorry to say, but if somebody has a good suggestion, then please let us know.
29,000 photos, just if you want concrete numbers. That's how many I've got on my phone.
Contacts addressed ordering. Tell me about this, John.
We're still talking about this?
I know, seriously.
Yeah, this is hilarious, right? So what was it? The previous show, we were talking about how a particular the existence of a particular application was an indictment of Apple because it's a type of thing that shouldn't be necessary. Oh, I think it was the sleep aid thing, the thing that like keeps track of what's waking and making your Mac sleep. And it's like the fact that Mac app has to exist shows that there are difficult to solve problems having to do with sleeping and waking in macOS that necessitate a third-party application. It makes a third-party opportunity to address the shortcomings in Apple's OS. Well, we also talked about contacts and how people can have multiple phone numbers and multiple email addresses, and there's an order to them in contacts, but it's difficult to discern whether that order has any meaning. And if you want it to have meaning, you can do what I did and reorder them by deleting them all and adding them back in the order that you want them to appear in. Well, apparently there is a dedicated application called Reorder It! ! Just like Yahoo! ! On the App Store. And the only thing this app does is lets you reorder contacts personally by deleting them and re-adding them in the order that you want. That boggles my mind because it shows that some people are just annoyed by the fact that they can't reorder them in the Contacts app. And it's actually, if someone has 4 email addresses, deleting them all and re-adding them all is tedious. So try Reorder It, I guess.
Yeah. !
Reorder it.
Tell me about the default addresses in Messages, please, John.
Rob Woodring gets the brass ring by giving me the actual solution to my problem. So remember, this all started with me talking about multiple addresses. Everything is like every time I try to share something via Messages with my son, if he's not one of the little recently sent message bubble things, then I have to hit the actual Messages app icon and then I have to type his name, A-L, and let the autocomplete fill it out. It would always autocomplete to his contact, but underneath his contact, it would have his phone number. And I wanted it to send to his Apple ID and not his phone number for reasons we discussed on past shows. And I couldn't figure out how to make that happen. People had a lot of different ideas. Last week, the one that I heard from a lot of people was just delete the whole message thread and restart it, because whatever you use to start that message thread with the person, forever, when you autocomplete in Messages, it will autocomplete to that, because it's basically saying, hey, do you want to put this in the existing conversation I have? And the existing conversation that I have in Messages was started 7 years ago to a phone number, not to an Apple ID. Well, here's the actual solution. Rob says you can change what you are messaging without losing your previous message history. Go to an existing message thread, tap the name of the person at the top, then tap info, then tap and hold the messages bubble icon and select an alternate email or phone number. This has worked for me to switch between phone number and email and back to a different phone number later when my dad switched to an Android phone. The message thread was preserved, pictures and all. I tried this and it worked. This is the solution. And it's very close to the thing we talked about before, where you go to the contact and hold like long press on the little message bubble and pick. But that doesn't do it. That doesn't change the thread. You have to go to the messages thread, then do the thing at the top and long press or whatever. And from now on, whenever I type my son's name, it autocompletes and shows the Apple ID. And I was glad I didn't delete the message thread before, because now I have all my messages preserved and now I know how to fix this. So it only took a month of talking about it on a podcast with dozens of people sending solutions, including people at Apple. Rob Woodring found the real solution.
Wait, I'm sorry. Can you walk me through this? Because I don't think I see where this is. So
find a message thread with somebody in Messages that you want to change this for.
right? Okay, so I'm just choosing my dad arbitrarily because we exchanged text like right before the show. So I tapped him, and I
tap
see
his name at the top, tap the info thing on the right.
Oh, that was the piece I missed. I'm sorry. Okay, so you have to tap the info thing. Okay.
And then long press on message. And now you see the list, and then pick whichever one.
Okay, it was the info piece that I missed. I'm sorry. I'm with you now. Oh, that is a very good tip. I knew that there was some mechanism by which to do this, but I certainly did not know the exact incantation. So like you said, Rob Woodring gets the gold star for today.
We are sponsored this week by Squarespace, the all-in-one platform for building your brand, growing your business online, or making any kind of website. You can stand out, engage with your customers, and sell whatever you want with a business, your products, your content, even your time. Squarespace makes it super easy to make all different kinds of websites. Whether it's a few pages of info for you or your business or your hobby, all the way up to an entire storefront where you're selling digital or physical goods, or maybe even you're selling gated content like videos or courses you create, or selling newsletters. All of that and more is possible with Squarespace, and there's no coding required anywhere. You don't have to be a programmer or a designer to make a really great website on Squarespace. And of course, Squarespace websites don't let you deal with all the problems and hassles of running your own CMS. You don't have to deal with security upgrades or software patches or uptime and dealing with influxes of traffic. None of that is your problem. Squarespace takes care of all of that for you. They have amazing support if you need it, although frankly, it's so easy to use, you probably won't need their support for anything. It's that easy. And you can just do so much with Squarespace. They have analytics built in, custom templates, SEO tools. You can have email campaigns, so much functionality built into Squarespace. So see for yourself with a free trial at squarespace.com/ATP. And what I love about Squarespace's free trials is that when you have an idea for a website, you can just go there and build it. You never have to give them a credit card. There's no automatic renewal if you forget to cancel the trial. It's just a real free trial, and you can build the whole site in trial mode. So you can see if Squarespace is really right for you. And when you decide it is, and trust me, you will decide because it's that good, when you're ready to launch, use offer code ATP to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. Once again, squarespace.com/ATP. Offer code ATP to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. Thank you so much to Squarespace for sponsoring our show.
We had a little bit of feedback with regard to unlocking automotive features. A couple of things that I was not familiar with or aware of. Blaine Toops wrote in, it's not exactly what John meant when he said it's not like they're going to put a V8 when you buy a V6. But my Jaguar F-Type is pretty close. The V6 uses the same engine block as the V8, just with the last two cylinders closed off. This allows for the same mounting points and supercharger we use for both engines at the cost of hauling around an extra 50 pounds of unused weight with the V6. The extra material cost of the unused bit of the V8 block is offset by only having to engineer and produce one version of the rest of the engine bay. I find this utterly fascinating. This is like a cheaper version of, Aston Martin, not Aston Martin, Alfa Romeo took the Ferrari motor and lopped off two cylinders and called it a day, but they full on cut them off. In this case, it would be like, we just aren't going to include a couple, or aren't going to use a couple of them, which is fascinating.
It's like cylinder binning. It's like the way GPUs are disabled on the M2.
It's a very Jaguar move though, because it always, for the past, several decades, it always seemed like Jaguar is just kind of like, even though they're supposed to be a luxury brand, they just always kind of got not great technology, a lot of hand-me-downs, maybe some Ford parts bin stuff back in the day. You don't deserve that. The things they do with these supposed expensive cars to save weight, and you're gonna leave two unused cylinders in the block, only an extra 50 pounds. That's not good. You don't want this. I wouldn't talk about this and say, oh yeah, sure, it's great, because no. It's all the weight of a V8, but the power of a V6. No thanks.
Oh man, it's so fascinating to me that this was a thing, though. I just thought that was really cool. And then Josh Rappaport writes, Tesla offers something called acceleration boost on the Model 3 and Y long range. On the 3, it also unlocks a track mode, and supposedly that functionality is coming to the Y as well. It's a $2,000 US in-app purchase. I'm not sure it's really an in-app purchase if it's in your car, but so be it. I get your point.
Do they pay Apple 30%?
Yeah. That decreases the 0 to 60 time by about half a second. Looks like these IAPs are unlocked on the car for future owners as well. Also, rumor has it that at their introduction, the long range and performance variants of the cars had the same motor and drivetrain, though it seems like they may have moved to more of a binning or slightly differentiated set of components in the more recent times.
Yeah, Tesla's always sold various things that basically you're paying to abuse the internals of your car more, like the, acceleration mode or whatever. Like they lock it out as a premium feature, but those type of things like, oh, get that extra half second is, stressing the internals and the circuitry and the battery of your car a little bit more to get that extra power. And for that privilege, you pay them $2,000. It's like, maybe just don't worry about the extra half second.
Yeah. And then finally, Sean Harding writes, on the BMW subscriptions, what happens in 7 years when the API gets deprecated and your car can't verify the subscription status anymore? My Audi long ago stopped getting software updates, but the heated seats still work perfectly. Well put, Sean. Well put.
That is a very good question because, I was just mentioning a few minutes ago how all those old iPad games from that first generation of iPad stuff, through various digital unfortunateness, you really can't play those anymore. Unless you happen to have an old iPad that happens to have them already installed on it, there's really no way for you to get those. I ran into this problem a couple years ago, or last year, whenever it was. I booted up my old iPhone, and I believe I talked about it on the show, my very first gen iPhone, and just tried to figure out okay, what can I do with this? What can it still do? And of course, as you can imagine, the original iPhone can't run any recent software. I think the latest it can run was iOS 3.1, I think. But at any rate, it couldn't do anything really because all of the SSL certificates on everything that it was capable of using had expired or had been upgraded to higher levels of encryption that it can't support. And so now that we're in this era of everything is encrypted, everything is secure, everything is signed, old software on old platforms almost can't run. There's very few cases in which old enough software actually runs because something expires somewhere along the way, and we are so connected with services in the modern world that if your old hardware can't connect to a web service anymore, a lot of times it doesn't work or can't work. And that's something worth thinking about with something that has as long of a lifespan as a car. For some of these BMWs, unless you have Casey's luck with BMWs, they're probably going to last at least 10 years of active service on the road. And how many times does a 10-year-old computer actually have good luck accessing its services? And I think it's going to be a problem that we're going to have to deal with.
I wonder if they actually are doing online verification, or is just flipping a switch internally. This is the type of thing where if they try to prevent people from hacking it and do all these things, that's when you do, we have to have online checks and we have to have all this and that, and that'll sort of mess you up. But if they're smarter about it, they'll just be it's a software lockout. And when we unlock it, it unlocks locally, and we never recheck online to see if you have it unlocked, and we just take the hit or whatever. I mean, this is another situation like any software where it really depends on the company that you're buying from. To give an example, when a good software company stops developing an application, what they normally do is say, we're not going to make this app anymore. It doesn't make us any money. It's time has passed or whatever. But on our way out the door, here it is. If anyone wants it, here's a version where you don't have to register. It's free. You can have we're not going to sell it anymore. Anyone who paid for it in the past 6 months will give you a refund, and forevermore, it's unsupported, but you can download it from our website, right? And so the car version of that would be, we're deprecating the API that we used to do online checks for the heated seats, but it's unlocked for everybody now. We send one last thing out that said, hey, all you cars out there that are checking this API endpoint for unlock for heated seats, we built the system such that when we shut this endpoint down, the way they'll fail is saying, we'll send them one last message that said, it's unlocked for everybody and don't bother checking again, right? That would be the good thing to do that a good car company would do. But the example I had in mind with a good software company was Panic, and the example I had with a good car company in mind was nobody, because they're all bad.
I mean, really, the correct good thing to do would be, hey, this feature that's so cheap that you can actually ship it for everyone and just selectively disable it in software, how about just make that a stock feature of the car? Because these aren't expensive, these aren't cheap cars. It's this is already a premium car. You know what? Maybe make this just a stock feature if it's that cheap for you.
The Unity CEO would say you're an effing idiot. You're not thinking about monetization when you're making these seats.
Because there's no way to monetize a car besides in-app purchases and subscriptions, right?
There's no service model for cars.
Oh my word!
Car services? Unheard of.
Yeah, right.
Have we talked about this? Maybe we might have talked about this, and I don't remember. But if Apple is obsessed with services, and Apple is making a car, if that's true, what are the services for the Apple car? Like, what is that going to look like?
Yeah, all those Wear items. Same as everybody.
No, I mean like the in-app purchase sort of things, or like the subscription sort of things.
Yeah, can you imagine Apple like using someone else's tires and brake pads? No way. It's going to be all custom stuff.
No, that's not how the car industry works, and that's why the Apple hasn't made a car yet, maybe.
Yeah. Can you imagine? Like, I was just thinking about stuff like that. Like all the parts on a car that have someone else's brand name on them. Apple would not stand for any of that. Like, like they're not going to have tires that say Goodyear on the side. Like they're going to, whoever makes their tires for them, they're going to make them give them brandless tires.
I don't know. I don't think it's really possible to make a car that way unless you're willing to sink way more of Apple's money than they thus far have been willing to sink to this and spend even more time. Although that's a funny thing, like on more car rebuilding channel things. Sorry, so you've got OEM parts. I'm watching all about rebuilding BMWs, and you have whatever company actually made this plastic doohickey. BMW doesn't make it, right? And if you buy it from the BMW dealer, of course, it costs 10 times as much or whatever, but you can get that same part from the manufacturer that makes it for BMW. But when you buy it from the manufacturer, the part that they make has BMW stamped on it, right? BMW didn't make it. This other company made it, but it's got BMW. But when you buy it from the manufacturer, they have to file off the BMW. So they make it with BMW stamped on it, but they're not allowed to sell it with BMW stamped on it. So they literally take a finished part and modify it by scrubbing or filing or melting off the BMW logo. And then you get the two parts. Here's genuine, here's the copy. And, as opposed to adding it afterwards. So, yeah, the car industry is weird. And I really don't think Apple's going to have tires that have apples on the side, but and don't say Goodyear or Michelin. But, Apple hasn't made a car yet, so we'll see. But that's just not the way the car industry works. And if you're going to say, we're going to do everything ourselves, like, look inside Apple's laptops. The chips say, the memory chips say Micron and stuff. Like, they don't say Apple on all of them.
Yeah, but the customer doesn't see those. Like, you see the tires on your car, and you see if they have a brand name on them. There is no way, mark my words, people can quote this later in 10 years when Apple actually ships the car. There is no way Apple's going to launch a car where the tires have someone else's name printed on the outside.
Apple's going to have to become a tire manufacturer because I'm not sure any tire manufacturer is not going to have their name on that tire.
No, they would I'm sure they would make a deal. They would custom, order it from whoever would say yes first, and it would take them a while. But I mean, honestly, maybe this is why
$2 million hypercars have Michelin,
because they don't care,
or Goodyear on the side of them. They care.
I mean, look, before the iPhone, $600 smartphones had Verizon logos on the back of them. This is one of those things where like Apple's going to go in there with just the most stubborn position in the world, and eventually somebody will do it for them for the right price.
Some desperate singular. I mean, Apple had the word Verizon on its phones back before the notch when they could fit it.
No.
Wait,
no,
well,
no.
in the status bar a little bit. No, but I'm saying like on the phone. I
understand. I'm just saying that brand names have been on iPhones. Yes, it's on the screen, but they could have just put an Apple logo.
Verizon is still on the screen.
Is it?
Well, yeah, on the lock screen anyway.
Yeah, I guess it is. It's still there. I was wondering if there was room at the notch.
On the lock screen. It's not on the once it's unlocked, but it is on the lock screen.
We are sponsored this week by Linode, my favorite place to run servers. Visit linode.com/ATP and see why Linode has been voted the top infrastructure as a service provider by both G2 and TrustRadius. And I would give them that award too if I had one, because I host tons of servers and resources at Linode. It is by far my favorite web host I have ever used. Because, look, I'm a nerd. I run a bunch of servers. Many of you out there, you need to run servers for some reason, whether it's, backends for websites or web apps or regular apps, or whether you're running game servers or whatever it is. If you need servers, check out Linode. They have amazing support, amazing pricing, and amazing capabilities. So all sorts of resource levels that you might need at all different price points. All of them are extremely price competitive. These are the best values in the business. I've looked around. I always look around. I've been with Linode for a long, long time, and they're always the best value in the business. I frankly don't know how they do it, but I'm glad they do because I take advantage. I run a lot of servers there, so I'm saving a bunch of money on Linode compared to what I would be spending anywhere else. And they have all sorts of additional options. New services have recently launched, including managed databases. This is fully managed MySQL, Postgres, and Mongo, with Redis coming later this year. It's super easy to deploy, built-in backups, secure access, flexible plans, everything you might need with managed database service. They also have a block storage service for large disks and an object storage service, which is an S3 compatible object storage. I actually just started using object storage on Linode today. I just started coding against it, and I literally just pointed my S3 library at their hostname and changed nothing else, and it worked. It's kind of amazing, and I'm very much looking forward to diving more into that. So see for yourself at linode.com/ATP. Create a free account there and you get $100 in credit. Once again, linode.com/ATP. New accounts there get $100 in credit. Let Linode make your cloud computing fast, simple, and affordable so you can focus on your projects, not your infrastructure. Thanks to Linode for sponsoring our show.
Let's talk about something that is truly important because it has been a long time coming. I feel like, on this show, Adam pre-existed the show, but on this show, Declan was born, Michaela was born, your Mac Pro, your current Mac Pro was born, but perhaps more important than anything else, you've gotten a new television. There's a new birth in the ATP family, and it is John's television.
I did get a new television. I think I had the stats on last Rectus. I think it's been like 8 years-ish. Something like that.
Well, then we might have been there for the last one. It depends on when it was.
It was 2013. Yeah.
When in 2013? Because it was
we started
March-ish.
December-ish.
Okay, so then we were here for it. All right, so I apologize. All right, I don't care. Let's move on.
But that was just that was where I panic bought the last great plasma. I had recently, quote unquote, bought a plasma a couple of years before, and I was like, oh, they're going to not make plasmas anymore. I better get the best one. Right now, and I get the last best Panasonic plasma, and then they stopped making them.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, I think we were around for this one. All right, well, never mind. I take it all back.
Anyway, it's been a long time. So I had sort of I'd been working on this, I talked about this in past shows on some of my podcasts, buying the parts because I was afraid I wouldn't be able to get them. I was afraid that if I waited until everything was ready to come, then I'd be like, all right, let me order everything that I exhaustively researched for the past 8 years. And they'd be like, oh, sorry, not in stock or whatever. So as soon as I decided what I was getting, I just started buying stuff. So for literally months, I've had a brand new receiver and a Blu-ray player that we talked about on a past show that I did some surgery on. Sitting in my house, I bought the stand for the TV because I can't use the one that it comes with because of my weird house situation. And that I half assembled and stuck in a closet, gathering dust, all waiting for the TV to come. While this was happening, the day before the TV was supposed to be delivered, which was delivered by this special courier or whatever. I bought it from Sony.com directly because it was the only place you could order it. I don't know if it's available anyplace else. I'm sure it will be eventually, but I bought it within 60 seconds of it becoming available on Sony.com. It was not announced. So thank you to all the people on Twitter who told me, hey, it's live on Sony, because there was no announced date or time that I was aware of. But anyway, I got my order in, and then they had it delivered to this courier who then had to call me and arrange for a time for delivery, which was convenient because I was out of town when they wanted to deliver it. And I said, can you wait until I get back in time? And they said, fine. But anyway, while I was waiting for the TV to come, I can do some stuff. I can take my old TV off, take everything out because everything has to go. The only thing that I didn't actually remove from the entertainment center was my TiVo because that's staying. But I did move it to clean under it or whatever. Took out the old receiver, boxed it up, put it away. Unhooked all the game consoles, took all the other junk off of there, got it all cleaned out, and then I put in the new receiver and the new Blu-ray player. And doing the receiver is a pain because I connect all the speaker wires, and it's just a logistical nightmare. But anyway, I plugged it all in, put everything back that I could, put the Blu-ray player back where the PlayStation 3 was because that used to be my Blu-ray player. I can have my center channel speaker actually centered on my TV now, which is nice because it didn't fit on top of the George Foreman grill that was the PS3. I had a PS3 Slim, but still, it's sort of rounded on top, so you couldn't put a speaker.
It's all relative.
Yeah, you couldn't put a speaker on top of it because it would just skitter off. So anyway, I was happy with that setup. And then I put the old TV back temporarily just so I could have a TV to see the screen, because what I was going to do is set up my surround thing. If you haven't set up a receiver in recent years, the way most of them work is you put your receiver in, you hook up all your speakers and everything, and then they mostly have either a thing that you do with an on-screen menu, or in modern days, a thing you can do with an app on your phone or something, where they give you, you might be confused when you see this in the box, a very, very, very long, thin cord with a little disc or puck or knob at the end of it. And that's a microphone. And what they want you to do is run whatever their software is, put that little microphone basically where your head would be as you sit on the couch, and it will play through all the speakers in your room, and it will adjust the volume and phase and all the other stuff of the speakers so that it sounds good in that seating position. There's lots of different software that does this. Even my old receiver, which was years and years ago, had a system for doing this.
Wait, what about the people who sit on the other parts of the couch?
Well, so the fancier software says we don't just measure one position. It has like a 3D model of the room, and it says put it in, like, if you can imagine like the volume of the room with various spots in it. The software I was using had up to 17 positions that you could measure, and it would try to sort of average it together and try to make it sound okay in most of the positions with no bad things. This is important to me because my room is weirdly shaped. My speakers are weirdly placed. This is not like every time you see one of these things on TV, it's like I live in a rectangular room and my television is directly in front of me and the couch is right in front of the TV and my surround speakers are exactly at the corner. Like, I don't know who lives like that. Maybe you build like a dedicated home theater room, but it's definitely not my room. My room is weird shaped. My TV is in the corner. Nothing is at right angles to anything. Nothing is at the height you expect. So I have to do this sound adjustment thing. The receiver I bought supports 2 different sound adjustment things. One that's like the easier one, that's older and easier and built in. I forget what the name of it's called. It has some acronym, MCCR, whatever, something like that. And then the other one, which is the fancy one that all the reviews, if you look on YouTube, say, oh, this is the best, what do they call it? Room compensation. It's the best room compensation feature. It's called Dirac Live, DIRAC space live. I think you can do it on your phone. I tried to do it on the phone and it seemed to be wanting me to download a Mac app, so I did. I was more comfortable with that anyway. And you run the Mac app, and I was using like my tripod for my camera because the little microphone screws into the little tripod top, and it tells you where to put it around the room with the tripod. Put it in this seating position, that position, in front of the couch, behind the couch, high, low, 17 different positions.
This sounds awful.
You also do volume adjustment. It's kind of fun because, the app takes you through kind of like a wizard, and it says, first, we're going to test all your speakers to make sure this is supposed to be the left front. This is the right, make sure you're wired correctly, right? And then it does volume adjustment, and it plays like white noise through each of the speakers. It reminded me when I had an infant at home. It's just white noise through the house. And then when it does the sound testing, it's like, don't make any noise. If like a dog barks or a kid talks or something falls down, it will invalidate the test, and you have to adjust the microphone gain. Anyway, it's not a fun thing to do.
None of this sounds fun.
Nope.
It makes weird noises, like, because it goes like, whoop, it makes like various frequency noises and like echolocation things and low and high volume.
And those high frequency noises can hurt.
Yeah, they have a whole thing of like, be careful, start with the volume low and bring it up, but you have to have it at a certain minimum volume. If the volume's too low, it will complain and say, but this test didn't work because your volume's too low, turn the volume up, So I spent a while doing that. This is with the old TV, but the new receiver, because, this receiver and the speakers aren't going to change, and the TV isn't really involved in this process at all, except showing me the on-screen menus to set things up, basically. And then I'm sitting there with the Mac laptop, which it was pretty neat. It was like wirelessly controlling everything through Wi-Fi, because the receiver's on Wi-Fi, of course, in this modern era. The app, when they say, like, the simpler one that's built in, and this is the more complicated one, I should have just used the simpler one. Because the more complicated one was really complicated and really time consuming, and I'm trying to tell everyone in my house, everyone has to be quiet. My dog was the least of my problem. My kids were like, I'm just going to walk up and down stairs, and because if you move anywhere in my house, it makes noise. My house makes noise if you move, right? It's an old creaky house. Every door clanks, every floorboard squeaks. So it was a little bit onerous and didn't particularly enjoy it, but it's really important because, like I said, my room is weird. So when delivery finally came, I'm like, oh, this fancy delivery service for this expensive TV, they probably don't want to send it FedEx or, UPS. They want to send their own dedicated thing. So it's a courier from the airport. They're going to call someone up and they're going to arrange for a time. I did all that. I double checked because they send all these automated emails like, your delivery has been delayed. Because I was like, is that because I delayed it? It turns out, yeah, it was because I delayed. So I called back up and said, I'm getting a delivery today. And they said, yeah, you are. Anyway, who comes to my house? It's a van with one guy.
Oh, no.
One guy? You send one guy with a 65-inch television? He's got a little cart with wheels on it, but, I went out there and helped him because I'm like, look, whatever. I don't know what Sony pays for this delivery, but this thing should be carried by 2 people. The box had, like, your typical sort of something has punched through this box and made a C-shaped hole, so there's a little flap dented in. It's like, how far did that go in, right? And I'm like pressing on it or whatever. Luckily, that was the back side of the TV, and it didn't go in very far, but it did. Like, I took pictures of it just in case. And interestingly, since I had just boxed up my old TV, yes, of course, I had the original box to my old TV. Since I had just boxed up my old TV.
Those are not small.
Nope.
No, it's not small. It was a very big box. That was a 55-inch plasma, and that 55-inch plasma weighs more than this TV, and the box is substantially larger. I was surprised when I saw this box. I know, OLEDs are way less than plasmas. Plasmas are big, heavy things. This plasma had fans in the back of it, had big glass, big bezels around it. The new box was smaller. In all dimensions, I think it was smaller. It just had less stuff. And, I was like, oh, maybe you should put more padding in this thing. Anyway, the way my old box works, things were so much better back in the old days when Panasonic was still selling things here. It's a very large box, and if you read the instructions on how you're supposed to get your TV out of it, it's basically like there's a base where the TV is stuck in a bunch of styrofoam, like vertically, and then the top of the box comes off. The top of the box goes onto that base and touches the ground, and the only thing that's holding that together are 4 holes that are through both the sort of top and the base, and these little plastic sort of grommets that go through both of them and snap in. That's literally when you're picking that box up by like the little handles on the side, you are picking up the cover, the top of the box, and that in turn is pulling on those grommets and it's picking up the bottom part of the box. And I was like, oh, that always seems, for like 100-something pound box with the base and everything in it, it seems unsafe or whatever. So the Sony comes, we bring it into the house. Luckily, the guy wasn't some weird setup service thing. It was just like, all right, I'm done. I brought it into your house. I'm like, good. Anyway.
As if you would let them set it up.
Right?
Well, no, but the plasma people, we have to open it up and make sure it works. Otherwise, we won't, because if you blame us for a delivery, we have to confirm that it works or whatever. And I just I don't want it. But this guy didn't have to do that. So I'm like, okay, how do you open this one up? So I look at the little instructions and it says, oh, the top lifts right off. This is going to, someone from Sony will explain to me how this works. But I was like, okay, well, I open up the top of the box and I take some styrofoam out, and then I see the piece of paper that says, oh, the top lifts off. I take the styrofoam out and I could see the box. That's how I saw, the hole was in the back of the box and it didn't hit the TV, so that's good. I was relieved about that. And then it said just the top of the box lifts off. And I lift the top of the box off and I'm left with the base with styrofoam with the TV sticking out of it. And I, continue to just, take the TV out of the styrofoam and put it down on the ground because I was going to have to attach the stand to the back and all that stuff. Only later did it occur to me, hey, wait a second. What was holding the top of the box onto the bottom of the box? I do not have that answer right now because I can tell you when I reassembled the box, there is no visible connection. I didn't cut any tape. I didn't remove any grommets. And if you put the box back together and put your hands in the handles inside and pick it up, it just lifts the top back up again. The bottom just stays behind. And I know this because the bottom, the stand that it comes with, weighs 50 pounds. It's the heaviest thing in the box, and I'm not using that. So I left that in the box. So I put that in the box, put the top back on, put my hands in the handles, lift it up, and the top comes right off. It's very confusing. The only thing I can think of is that the styrofoam that's in there, your hands go into the handles and grab the styrofoam, but that styrofoam doesn't extend to the bottom. Maybe that styrofoam grips the TV somehow. I don't know. It's confusing. And it doesn't make me feel safe either. Anyway, got the TV out. I'm going to put the stand on the back. It's a third-party stand because I can't use the one that it came with because it's too wide. So it's like a pedestal stand. It's from Amazon. It's just some random brand. It is the most sturdy-looking, least embarrassing-looking one that I could find. Lots of them are embarrassing, like Casey's Visa mounts that he's sitting in front of now.
Yep.
That's ugly. I would not put that on my thing. This is just a rectangle with a thing coming out of it. And it doesn't rotate or anything because I didn't want one that doesn't move, tilt, bend, rotate. It's just everything is perpendicular because that's the way I want it. I never want to rotate it. I never want to tilt it. I never want to do anything with it. Luckily, the back of the Sony is flat. I was excited by that. No weird humps, nothing weird like that. And there was lots of different connection things to put it on with washers and everything. I attached that, put it on the stand, connected the cables. So much fewer cables than I had before because before I had so many things connected to it. Back in my last TV, I couldn't really commit to having everything go through the receiver. Every game console was directly connected to the TV and also could be connected through the receiver. And I had 2 HDMI things hanging out in the back of ones, and I could swap them if I wanted lower latency than going through the receiver. Didn't do that this time. It's just one, start off with 2 and eventually down to 1 connection from the receiver to the television, and everything else goes to the receiver. Most of my game consoles are now decorative, so I removed all their power bricks and everything.
Oh my goodness!
They used to, you don't realize how big the power bricks are. If you have just to list 3 of them, if you have the Wii, the Wii U, and the GameCube, they all have giant external power bricks and wads of cords and everything. It's just a mess back there. was glad to get rid of that, but I still have those consoles there as decorations. Let's see, what else did I do this thing? The back panels are neat. Like there is a place to route the cables, and there's these little sort of snap-on. Speaking of cars, if you ever know what body clips look like on cars,
yeah,
where parts of the outside of your car, if you see how cars are assembled and disassembled, it really makes you wonder how they don't fall apart more often, because lots of things are glued and lots of things are just clipped with these little plastic clips, like a little, just plastic clips that probably break when you disassemble them because there's something that snaps into a little slot or whatever. That's how these things work. And it's pretty nice because it's easy to take on and off, and they snap into place and they hold firmly. Very happy with everything about the setup process. It went surprisingly smoothly. It just barely fits in my house. Like, I did all the measurements beforehand. I'm like, I think it'll clear the radiator. I think it won't hit the wall. I think I won't have to move any furniture. Thumbs up on all accounts, but I cannot get a bigger television. This is a good wake-up call to say 65 is the limit. My house cannot accommodate a larger television. It will literally hit walls. And I do want to leave room for me to like worm behind it to get back there and mess with stuff. The remote it comes with is nice. As with so many things, it embarrasses the Apple remote. Not because it's an amazing remote, but it just shows that it's not hard to do better than the Apple remote. We loved it so much because the old one was so bad. But the Sony remote is, it's got sort of like a textured plastic on the back, so it's more grippy than the smooth Apple one. It's still too small, but it's bigger than the Apple one, both length and width. It has a pleasing heft to it in the way that they used to make electronics feel expensive by making them feel dense. They do that with this. I don't know what it's filled with, probably literally like lead weights or whatever, but hey, it works. It's got light up buttons that only light up when you pick the thing up. It's got a speaker on it, so you can say something and it will make a beeping noise so you can find the remote if you lose it. Not that that would ever happen to me. It's got a very clicky circular wheel on it. It's not as good as a TiVo remote, but it feels expensive. And it's the first of several remotes that came with the setup that now exist in my house and have Netflix buttons and Amazon Prime buttons and whatever the hell other branded buttons that are on the things. It's just the way of the world. The television itself, it's basically edge-to-edge screen. It does have a tiny little chin, like less than an inch high, and on a 65-inch TV, you don't even notice that, and it's black. In terms of condition, the only place I found blemishes on the TV where there's a couple little very small scratches on the metal chin that runs along the bottom. So small that you have to be like inches away from it to see them. I noticed them when I was peeling off the little static clear plastic, whatever that stuff is called, that they put in all appliances now, and that people leave on because they don't realize it's there. And honestly, I would not have seen this either if I hadn't been really close to the TV, like messing with the stand. But yeah, there was a little plastic thing over the front, and I peeled that off, and there's a couple little nicks in the metal chin, but not anything that I would ever do anything about. And that's where the lights on the front of the television are. There, I think, maybe one or two of them, both of which you can disable. Woo!
Oh, nice.
Software features, because, I'm going through the settings and turning everything off. It also comes with a camera that clips on to the back and, points towards you. I thought that was like an optional extra, but it's bundled with the TV. Should be for this price anyway. I don't know the quality of the camera. When I was attaching it, it's got magnets. It's got two little magnets that magnetically, it's not MagSafe, but it's got two little magnets that click it into the thing where it connects, and it's got a bunch of like little pin connectory things. It's a proprietary connection, right? But just when you click it in like that, it's still wobbly. I think they made it flexible, so because it was stiff and you tried to move it or something, you could crack it or whatever, but it's like flexible. And the reason I bring this up is because I connected it and the TV didn't seem to see the camera at all. I couldn't find out how can I use this camera. I downloaded like a Google Meeting app or something to see if it would do something, and it didn't work. And I was like, is this camera used for anything? Because I'd read reviews and they said, the TV will scold you if kids sit too close to the TV if it sees them on the camera or whatever. But this wasn't, I'm like, is it not connected? So I kept disconnecting the camera, reconnecting and disconnecting and reconnecting. Eventually I found out the TV knows the camera is there because there is a mechanical shutter on it, a plastic thing that slides in front of the camera that you can keep closed if you don't want it to be on and you're paranoid or whatever. And when you close that, a message pops up on the TV screen, says your camera, whatever thing is closed. It won't work until you open it. It's like, aha, the camera's there and you know that I closed it, but nothing uses it. Someone sent me a picture of their same TV with a feature like in the settings that sees that the camera's there, but mine doesn't see it yet. And the manual said, you may need a software update or whatever, but I've got the latest software update. Anyway, further news on this camera. Eventually, if I can't get it to work, I'm just going to take it off and stick the little panel that covers the plug in it. But I'm still willing to believe that the camera might do something someday. Setup process was fine. It's the first time I've ever used Google TV. It's Android-y. It's fine. It's not as responsive as Apple TV. It makes me appreciate Apple TV a little bit, but it's plenty responsive. You can download apps. It's got all the things you would expect built in. I have yet another way to watch Netflix. My Blu-ray player has a way to watch Netflix as well. Everything has a way to watch Netflix. What wouldn't? I don't know if it has Apple TV built in, but I think it does. I think it's also an AirPlay receiver without the Apple TV as well. I mostly do things through the Apple TV, but just FYI, it has a smart TV OS thing that's built in there. The only stumbling block I came upon when I was setting things up was a lot of TV apps, when you set them up, have a thing where, like if you're trying to sign into a YouTube app or whatever, it's like, just launch YouTube on your phone and you'll see a little notification. You can just say, let me in, right? Mm-hmm. That's as opposed to the old ways. In the olden days, you would say, go to youtube.com/activate and type in this 3-letter code, right? Well, a lot of the apps that do that would say, just make sure your phone is on the same Wi-Fi network as your TV. And, you'll see a thing pop up and they'll say that it may take up to 30 seconds, so be patient. Apparently, I'm not patient because I would launch these things and I would launch the app on my phone and it would say, wait 30 seconds. And I would look at it and I realized this TV isn't on the same Wi-Fi network as my phone. In fact, this TV is not on Wi-Fi at all because why would I do that? Everything's connected to Ethernet back there. The Apple TV is on Ethernet, the television, the Blu-ray player, all the game consoles, everything is Ethernet because wires.
Right? They can be. They're better.
Yeah. I mean, I have like a 10-port Ethernet switch by my TV entertainment center. But that means it's not on Wi-Fi. So I'm like, I can solve that. I'll just put it on Wi-Fi during the setup process. And so I went to Wi-Fi. It found my network. It said, enter your password for your network. I entered the password, and it shows a little spinner for a while. And this thing spins for, I guess, 60 seconds. And it says, couldn't find your network. Sorry. I tried my guest network. I tried re-entering the password for both of them multiple times. This TV will not connect to any of my Wi-Fi. I Googled for it, and you Google for Sony TV can't connect to Wi-Fi. All you find is like SEO spam pages that are just like, I don't know, copy pasta of random things like reboot your router or whatever. And then real articles from people who just can't get their Wi-Fi to work or whatever. So apparently it's not a widespread problem, or at least not that I know of, but could never get it connected to Wi-Fi. Like, I don't need it to be connected to Wi-Fi. I don't want it connected to Wi-Fi. It's on Ethernet. That's fine. And in practical purpose, I think it probably would have eventually worked because it is on the same network as my phone. It's just not on the same Wi-Fi as my phone. And I think when they say make sure it's on the same Wi-Fi, they just assume everyone uses Wi-Fi and not wire connections. But it is a kind of a sticking point. It's the one thing so far that, besides the camera, that I absolutely have not been able to get to work. The TV just will not connect to Wi-Fi. And each time it tries, it spins for like 60 seconds. So it's kind of annoying to work through all of that. I went through all the settings. Boy, there are a lot of settings. And for me, you're going through no, off, no. I was disappointed to learn. I don't know. I hadn't realized this, but Sony is one of the holdout companies that's not doing filmmaker mode in the TVs. This is a thing that, I don't know, the entertainment industry convinced the television industry to do. It's filmmaker mode, all caps. It's always in all caps, probably because of some branding reason or whatever.
Wait, really? That's like a standardized name? Like mine has it, but I just figured that was just like, what they were calling it.
No, it's a thing like an entertainment industry group, like people who make movies, like the movie studios got together with the the TV manufacturers and came up with this thing. It is a specific trademarked thing that it's kind of like, Dolby Digital or whatever, right? Like that, it's not just the individual thing. So, and it's always all caps, right? And the idea behind filmmaker mode is a mode in television where the television won't screw up the picture, basically. Like no motion smoothing, no denoising, no over brightening, no vibrance adding, no messing with the darks, no changing the frame rate, like no nothing. Show it the way it is on the disc or on the stream or whatever, right? It's the most accurate picture mode. You're not allowed to enable, like that's in the standard. Filmmaker mode. Sony, this TV does not have filmmaker mode. So you have to basically make it yourself. The custom setting, what they describe it as is they say, this is the most accurate, blah, 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 but you still have to go through in custom mode and turn off reality creation, turn off Cinemotion Pro Blend, whatever. What the hell, all these things, all the Sony brand names for like, the denoise filtering, the sharpening, like just got to turn all that stuff off. And by the way, don't forget, you got to do that for every input.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, no.
And I don't have that many inputs because of the receiver, but I did. My receiver confused me. I should have read the manual for us. It had 2 HDMI outs. It had one called main and one called sub. I'm like, why does it have two. I mean, I guess you can put two TVs, but only one of them
is the sub for HDMI ARC for sending to a sound bar or similar.
No, the I forget which one supports eARC, but it's not. That's a separate thing. But yeah, no, there is a dedicated ARC eARC port. But in the receiver, you can say one of the settings I found was where do you want to do Dolby Vision? Do you want to do it main or sub? I'm like, oh, I can see it's kind of like zone 2, zone 2 for the audio. I think sub is like zone 2 for if you want to have literally two televisions showing two different things, but only one of them can do Dolby Vision. So I'm like, oh, well, forget it. I'm just not connecting anything to sub. It's just main.
And just for the obvious thing here, that's not the subwoofer somehow. I suppose
no, it's an HDMI port. No, there is dedicated subwoofer ports.
No, it wouldn't surprise me if there are subwoofers that accept HDMI for some reason or something like that. I'm right there with you, Marco. I'm not saying that's what it is, but I had the exact same thought.
Does it only send the darkest parts of the picture to that port?
Right. Yeah, there's a crossover setting you can change there. So I just have main connected. I don't have anything connected to sub. But then I had two HDMI ports connected to it. That was a little bit confusing. So I had to set the settings in both places. Doing this, having a television screen, a receiver, Blu-ray player, Apple TV box, or whatever, there's a lot of fighting for what goes on the screen. Because every one of those devices has something they want to display on the screen that relates to the configuration of that device. The receiver, for example, can take over the whole screen with just its UI, which looks kind of like early 2000s Web 2.0, kind of like lots of gradients and artwork showing things or whatever. And you can configure the receiver that way, right? The Blu-ray player has a menu system that's it looks older than the receiver. It looks like a very blurry, low resolution web page, incredibly slow animation, slower than any computer has ever been at moving the focus ring from one thing to the other. So slow that you would never want to use it. So yeah, my Blu-ray player will do Amazon Prime Video and Netflix or whatever, but you would never want to do anything other than it's so slow, so horrible. And then of course, the receiver also has another way to put UI up on the screen, and it's the way, kind of reminds me of when Mac OS 10 was maybe public beta or maybe the developer preview. One of the screenshots I included was a picture of a Mac desktop or the desktop background or the boot screen or something, like the Mac OS 10 GUI, but with a bunch of Unix text coming down the screen, blacking out, the text is light text on a black background, and everywhere there's text, the line of text has a black border around it, right? It's just it's kind of, I don't know, I'm not describing it well, but it's as if Unix had come and scribbled over macOS.
Yeah, right? It's like when your in-flight monitor on the back of the seat crashes and it starts rebooting its Linux thing and it starts spitting it all over the screen.
Right, but imagine that going over the Mac UI, only blacking out the parts where the lines are. So if it's a short line of text, it's a little short blacked out area or whatever. That's what the receiver also has a mode where it puts up it looks like a VCR kind of on-screen display from the late 80s, right? Of a fixed width font, very bitmappy or whatever. It can put that on the screen as well for a whole other set of features. Oh my goodness. And so everybody has a way to, and the TV itself can do a bar at the bottom, can do multiple different bars at the bottom. It could also do a full screen thing. And of course, Apple TV does a full screen thing, and there's a lot of UI going. I have not settled this down to the point where I'm ready to explain to the family how to use the new TV. But the good thing about that is that I am now, and hopefully by the time you hear this recording, an HDMI CEC unicorn. Because now everything in this setup has been replaced except for the Apple TV and the TiVo. And everything works. If you pick up the Apple TV remote, I know, if you pick up the Apple TV remote, everything's turned off. Pick up the Apple TV remote, hit the power button on it, turns TV on, switches to the Apple TV, turns the receiver on, just everything works. If you turn it off, turns everything off. I didn't do anything. The Apple TV remote can change the volume and do everything like that. The TV remote can control the volume and can also control the Apple TV somehow with the four-way thing. Everything just knows about each other and everything works together. I'm just don't touch anything. I didn't do anything to set this up. This is just the way it worked. The only bad thing is occasionally, if you turn stuff on, sometimes the TV wants to show its UI. There's a setting that says, hey, when I turn on, what do you want me to do? And I said, show your last input. Don't go to the home screen. But sometimes people, they want to use the TiVo, which is the oldest device. You'll turn the TiVo on, and it'll turn everything on, but it'll show the Google TV menu. And you have to basically dismiss the full screen Google TV menu. It's on the right input, but you have to dismiss the Google UI to get to the TiVo UI that's underneath it. Kind of confusing. I'm still working on it. The reason I mentioned the receiver on-screen display, like Linux crash thing or whatever, is because that's the UI that you have to go to select the configuration that you saved with Dirac Live. It's not in the Web 2.0 gradient illustrations of RCA connectors and speakers and stuff. It's not there. When you use the Mac app and you save it, it's like saving a game on N64. It's like save this into slot 1 and you have 3 slots. So I saved my configuration into slot 1. Then you have to use the weird Linux crash desktop UI to select it from slot 1. And I didn't realize, I'm trying to watch things. I'm trying to watch shows, test things out, make sure everything works, get the Apple TV to, output Dolby Vision 4K and everything like that. And it's just a battle every step of the way because you're like, what menu makes this possible? Like you have to go into the receiver and say, oh, do you want your output to be 4K or 4K enhanced? Like, why does 4K not enhanced exist? Like change all the outputs to enhanced. Oh, now it can do Dolby Vision or whatever. And we actually watched a television show. I watched a television show with my wife. Let's watch the new TV or whatever. 2 things. One, it was a TV show that we had started on Disney Plus already. Like not started, but I have a habit where I will go to the next episode and get it to like 1 second into the next episode and pause it so that when we're ready to watch the next episode, I don't have to do anything. It's already, ready to go to the next episode, right? This is my way of avoiding the screen where, I can never find what I was watching. So we had already started to watch this episode of the show on Disney Plus, but we started to watch it on the old TV, which was not 4K and not HDR. So we watched the whole episode on the new TV. And I'm like, this doesn't look like it's HDR. I'm like, well, maybe the show is an HDR. It also doesn't look like it's 4K. Well, maybe this is not a 4K show or whatever. We watched the whole episode. And when I'm watching it, the sound is wonky too. I'm like, was my old surround just not configured well? But this sounds like some of the channels sound louder than they should be and the mix is weird. Then it started playing the next episode and it was 4K and HDR. I'm like, whoa. Oh. So apparently because I had started the stream, it just kept streaming the thing that it had been streaming, which wasn't for the new TV. And the second thing is I figured out, I haven't selected slot 1, the Dirac Live configuration. And so I watched that show with it just on the default configuration, which doesn't compensate for my room's weirdness, and it sounded terrible. So it took a few attempts to dial things in. Once I enabled the Dirac Live configuration slot 1, I was like, everything sounds way better. And there's a lot of that with like the different inputs and making sure things are configured and making sure everything is sending it in the enhanced mode and making sure everything is set to choose the best quality. And it just got so many menus. So I think I did round 1 and round 1 of fixing. Then I slept on it, did more internet research, did round 2 of fixing. And I guess I'll do round 3, I don't know, like as I watch more things, but I'm getting close. I'm getting close to everything working correctly, but things went pretty smoothly, I have to say. Like there was other than not being able to get on the Wi-Fi, everything eventually worked. Oh, one more barrier was the TiVo remote. I don't know if people remember the TiVo remotes, but you could make the TiVo remote control the power, volume, mute, blah, blah, blah for your television. And the way you do that is you have to type in this 4-digit code for your remote. It's like a universal remote code that lets it know, how to talk to your TV. And in the TiVo menu thing, you go through there and you say, what brand of TV do you have? And you pick and it says, okay, well, it's going to be one of these 6 codes or one of these 12 codes. Hold down these 2 buttons for 5 seconds till the red light comes on, then type the code and then try the power button and just keep doing that. And I did that for all the codes and none of them worked. And then I'm like, well, this is a brand new TV. Let me search online. I found a bunch more codes for Sony televisions, typed them all in. None of them worked. And then eventually one of them turned off the TV. I'm like, that one worked. Okay, but the volume seems wonky. So I tried some more codes. I'm like, none of those work either. Let me go back to the one that worked. And then that one wouldn't work either. And that's when I start having, the debugger, the programmer debugger thinking. And I think, all right, what explains this phenomenon? And of course, it's like, replace the batteries. And sure enough, it's like,
oh my word.
It's like depending on like if I was an inch or two, like how far away I was from the television, replace the batteries. And now like 6 of the codes work. And so that problem is mostly solved. The volume is still wonky, but mostly I just need the power button to work. But yeah, everything was pretty smooth. There's a lot to explore on this TV. I am never going to use the Blu-rays interface except to play Blu-ray discs because that thing is super janky. I hope I never have to use the receiver interface once I get everything tuned in. I did try my PlayStation 5 on it. I tried, I played Destiny in HDR, 120 frames per second, and it was pretty sweet. but not sweet enough to burn in my OLED, and actually not as good in PvP as my gaming monitor, because it helps for my old eyes to be really close and see everything in crisp pixels. Like I'm really close to my 27-inch monitor, and I'm like 10 feet away from my 65-inch TV. So it looked real nice, but honestly, 120 frames per second versus 60, it doesn't affect, my reflexes are too slow for that to make a difference. Like the input, the lag difference or whatever, it's not going to save me. And when you do 120, it drops it to 1080 in Destiny, because the PlayStation 5 can't do a 120 4K. So I honestly prefer a 4K 60. But anyway, the PS5 went back to the gaming monitor, but I did try that out. I played Blu-rays, I played movies, I played a bunch of 4K HDR demo footage on YouTube, which was fun. Oh, the other thing, I had heard about YouTube TV. They're like, oh, hey, when you get a 4K TV, you should look at YouTube TV, which is one of those services that lets you, replace your cable with something that in theory gives you like all the regular channels. You pay for HBO and Showtime, you get local channels, and it's like a cable package, but over the internet, right? There's a lot of those things. But the YouTube TV's selling point is they have 4K channels. So I pay for whatever the most expensive thing Verizon sells me as part of my Fios package to get all the channels, which is nice because I don't have to pay individually for HBO and Showtime. They come as part of my cable package, but I still get to use the HBO Max app and the Showtime app and all that other stuff. So that's convenient. But they're not, when you watch them on a TV, like when I watch them on my TiVo, which is not 4K anyway, but like the signal that comes to my television through my cable card is not 4K. But if you use YouTube TV and my fast internet connection, also from Verizon, this episode has been sponsored by Verizon.
Is it Verizon's ultra-fast nationwide 5G ultra-wideband network?
It's not 5G, thankfully. It is fiber optic, and it's very fast. And YouTube TV has channels in 4K. And, so if you want to watch HDTV in 4K, you can, but not through your cable company, only through YouTube TV. So I tried out YouTube TV, but it was like a free trial type thing. And it seemed pretty expensive because it was like $50 for the base thing, plus like, for each one of the HBO, Showtime, or whatever, another 12 or whatever bucks, plus a $9 like blanket surcharge for if you want 4K, because that's a thing. But anyway, I did the free trial with everything enabled, 4K, blah, blah, and sure enough, you can get 4K versions of channels, but their UI for like, going through the guide, it only goes one guide slide at a time. Like, so, you're on channel 5, not that that's the channel number, but anyway, you're on channel 5 and you swipe down or move the 5-way, it goes to channel 6, then 7, then 8, like on the big guide grid that you see. No one's got time to do that. It's not smooth. There's no way to flick scroll it, right? Just one at a time. And there are so many channels. At least on TiVo, you have page up, page down. You go through screenfuls at a time when you're looking at the guide. Or on Apple TV, you would use the touchpad and it would have momentum scrolling. I'm sorry, YouTube TV, but that is literally the reason I canceled that service, is because I cannot imagine going through this UI to find things to watch or record. It like does a DVR type thing as well, a server-side DVR. It didn't seem to have a season pass manager either. When I canceled it, they sent me this big survey like, why'd you cancel? I'm like, just copy everything TiVo did because you have no idea what you're doing. Right? So,
helpful.
Good 4K content, terrible UI. I tried the YouTube TV app on the television itself, which is a Google, runs Google TV. And I also tried the YouTube TV app on Apple TV, and they were both very bad. So it's not even as good as the Netflix UI in terms of recommendations and everything. They've got a long way to go. So I was disappointed by that, but at least it saves me some money. So anyway, I give the whole experience a big thumbs up. I am much more excited and impressed by this television than anyone else in my family. I can tell you that.
There's the surprise.
Yeah, no, it's just they don't care. I mean, I show them the footage of the honey dripping onto the thing on a black background. How are you not impressed by that? There's no blooming. It's the HDR. Every pixel is individually lit up. It looks amazing. Nobody cared. I'm like, do you understand? Like, you can't. I think we needed to buy a second worse television to put next to it and say, see what a mess this looks like.
Oh my gosh.
I'll send you guys a picture. I did take a picture of my a beauty shot of my television. If I can find it, I will send it to you.
Now, I'm sorry. I should have asked this a long, long time ago, but I didn't want to ruin your whole moment. What is the actual model number for this TV?
It is the Sony A95K. In my opinion, unless you are a hardcore gamer with a modern console that you want to play at 4K, 120 frames per second, it is the best television you can buy right now. It is a quantum dot OLED television, Sony A95K. The name just rolls off the tongue.
You can buy it on Amazon starting in a couple of weeks.
Really? Yeah, I was wondering when it was going to appear. Like
Amazon says it'll be released on August 11th.
Yeah, that's nice. So check out the picture. You can see what you can see in this. It probably won't be in the show notes because this is a picture of my house, but you can see the center channel speaker is now in the center. See the stand? Very boring.
Yeah, that's a very boring stand.
Here's an important quality of the stand. I can hide cables behind it.
That is actually really nice.
If you remember before, I had that V-shaped thing where it had a hole in the middle, so you had to run the cables down the V. This, I just have it stuck to the back of that thing, totally hidden.
This actually looks pretty nice. I mean, I know this is, right after cleanup and setup and rewiring and everything, so of course this is like as nice as it's ever going to look.
No, it never changes from this. This is always how it looks. You can ask anyone in my family. Nothing about this setup changes. Even once I get settled on the order of the little DVD things, which are also decorative, by the way, those also never change. You can see the right edge of the TV. See how it's over the radiator and almost touching the wall?
Yep.
And on the left side, there's a big enough channel for if I move those plastic bins, I can squeeze myself through there, putting my butt into the window, right?
Like to reach behind it for the wiring?
To get behind it to do all the wiring stuff.
But yeah, no, you're right. This is as big as you can go in that spot. For sure. Like, unless you somehow rearrange that room to have the TV not in the corner, but you can't put it over to the left, right? Isn't there a mantle there?
There's a gigantic fireplace and a mantle there.
Yeah, so you can't. Yeah, so I think this is it. This is as big as you can go.
Yeah, and that shade on the left is light blocking shade, right? So you don't get any light behind the thing. You can see the stupid camera on the top of it. I do like this stand. It's served me well. It's got glass shelves, holds everything up pretty well. I did micro level it because, of course, nothing in my house is level.
Micro level?
Yeah.
What is micro leveling?
It's mostly level if you put a level on it and you look at the little bubble, it's between the two lines. But is it in the middle between the two lines?
Oh my gosh.
Almost. And so when I micro leveled it, I leveled everything. What I wanted to tell was, is the third party stand level? Because maybe the third party stand is wonky, right? So I that's why I was looking at it with the level again. And I realized, man, the right side could go up a little. And I didn't want to try to put any tiny shims under the right side of the piece of furniture because it's so heavy with all that stuff on it. And I only needed to go up small. So what I did was I took some cardboard out of the recycling, like not cardboard like corrugated cardboard, but like the cardboard that like a cardboard box that plastic Ziploc bags come in, that kind of cardboard. And I cut one thickness of that, one tiny square of that. And I put one of those underneath each of the right-hand feet on the stand. Now it's really level.
Wow.
I'm so happy for you.
Does it bother you? I don't want to. I won't even read it. Never mind.
No, go ahead. Tell me. Is there something, some problem with my television that I need to address? I'm prepared.
Does it bother you that the bezel is thicker on the bottom than the other sides of it?
Oh yeah, no, that's fine. Like I said, that's the only place where there's a bezel. That there's like that less than 1 inch wide metal strip across the whole thing. I think this is also before I turned off the LED, so I think it's on in this thing. It's like a status indicator for the microphone because, of course, this thing has a microphone that you can make listening or whatever. But no, it's a chin, but like it's the smallest chin you've ever seen. My wife was saying it was disconcerting to her that the image like went to the edge of the thing. Oh, and this this about quantum dot OLEDs, but like the viewing angle is unbelievable. Plasmas have good viewing angles, and so do most OLEDs. But like because this thing is on an angle, you can get some pretty harsh angles if you're coming in the room against the wall, whatever. It never changes. It's the same brightness, the same colors. From any direction. It's phenomenal looking. But yeah, no, the chin doesn't bother me at all.
Yeah, our Beach TV is the stupid Samsung frame, which is LCD, and not even a very good LCD. It's just like a bog standard kind of edge-lit LCD. And every time we go to Westchester and I have my old OLED there, every time I'm like, whoa, first of all, good to see the Minecraft HUD burned in still. Mm-hmm. But second of all, oh my God, it looks so much better. Like it's... when I go from LCD to OLED, oh my God, such a big difference. It is so much better.
And QD OLED versus WRGB OLED is yet a step farther in viewing that because the regular OLEDs do color tint off axis and get a little bit dimmer. Not as bad as LCDs, obviously, but a little bit. But this QD OLED just does not change from any angle. It's kind of disconcerting. It's pretty amazing. And we're talking about those plastic bins you see next to the thing that just have a bunch of like old GameCube controllers and stuff in there. And my wife was like, well, now that you don't have the GameCube Connect anymore, we can get rid of those bins. I'm like, I don't know. They're kind of an important decorative element of the setup.
Wait, those just live there for like all the time?
Yeah, I mean, that's where if you want to use one of the consoles, that's where like the Wiimotes are and the GameCube controllers, which are wired. There's a Wavebird in there, the memory cards, like all that stuff is in there.
Your TV setup is so carefully curated to look nice and everything. You can't just have plastic bins sitting next to it.
But the plastic bins are also carefully curated. Like, for example, the
No,
white...
you got to have that nicer. If that stuff has to be there, you got to have some kind of like nice little piece there. It can't just be, plastic bins. No.
Well, so like I said, that white GameCube controller that you can see in the bottom bin with one handle of, that is a brand new, never been used white GameCube controller just sitting there pristine inside the thing.
Yeah, that is not on display, John. That's just in a bin.
It's kind of on display.
No, it's just in a bin.
That's just in a bin.
And I think about it. Anyway, they're nicely... Also, the important function is we have to put something there because there's an outlet behind there that things are plugged into. Not attractive looking things. So, like there's a clock on the mantle, but it's a USB powered clock. And it's connected through like a USB cable that plugs into a wall wart type thing. So I do need something to block, like the speaker wires go by there. You can't really see them, but the speaker wires are going that direction too. So I need something there to hide the shame of the
Well, but you have to put something there that doesn't add its own shame. Clear plastic bins full of stuff are their own shame.
I'm comforted by the idea of having clear plastic bins filled with console controllers. There's also a very slim PS2 inside there as well. And there's a couple of spare HDMI cables. They could be a little bit neater. There's a little bit of disruption to the stuff in there, let's say, when I was, removing, so I could rearrange them a little, but I actually kind of like having bins full of old console controllers next to my television. It makes me feel good. Same reason, like, why do I have all those things on the TV? The things that are DVD size cases. First of all, they're DVD size cases instead of Blu-rays because DVD cases are taller. And they're basically filling space. And what they are games that I really like, mostly in the order that I like them. Modulo an order that makes the color arrangement nice. The right-hand side I still need to adjust. It's a little bit off. But yeah, that's decorative, and also it's displaying favorites. And if you were to look to the left, you'll see another area filled with decorative / favorites of more DVD cases than Blu-ray cases. It's not ideal, but it's kind of what I've gotten used to.
See, that's something like, I think your arrangement of anachronistic DVD cases and game discs that you can't play anymore, that actually, I think, looks nice. But then when you compare it to the plastic bins of crap to the left, those don't look right.
Crap, that's not crap. The GameCube controllers alone could put kids through college. People want those. Completely unused original Nintendo.
So sell them now while they're still worth anything.
Oh, they're priceless to me.
Oh my god!
So you want those? Is what you're saying? No one else wants them as much as you do.
Yeah, people are like, oh, another happy coincidence, right? So you see the TiVo there. On top of the TiVo is my new Blu-ray player, which is just a black rectangle or whatever. I would have reversed that arrangement, but the TiVo is deeper, so I got to put the bigger one on the bottom. And then above that is my center channel speaker. There is zero space. That speaker is literally touching the top thing. You slide it and it goes like it is touching the underside of that table. I did not plan this, but it exactly fits.
Which means that you could never replace the TiVo or the Blu-ray player.
Yeah, I don't know. What would I buy? They don't make any different Blu-ray players. And the TiVo, someone's just offering me potentially another TiVo Romeo Pro, which is the model I have, which is the best TiVo that has ever been made. If you buy a brand new TiVo today, you cannot get one with as much storage space as the one that's sitting there, which boggles my mind. Like, that thing is, 5 years old? 6? Like, hard drive sizes are huge now, but now they're all smaller and crappier. Anyway, I hope it never breaks. If it does, I might just leave it there as a decorative element.
We were speaking of, Sean Harding had talked to us about the Audi, endpoints and deprecations. I guarantee that TiVo is not going to be around much longer. It's just...
they should have been dead a million times over. I don't understand how they're still functioning, and yet they do. And the TiVo still has an amazing responsive interface that is nicer to use than any of the modern things. It looks old and dated now, but just how fast it plays, pauses, jumps forward and backwards, and auto skips commercials by hitting the green button, like nothing matches that.
I mean, it seems like at this point, TiVo is kind of undead. Like, I think it seems like it should have died so many times. It seems like it shouldn't still be working, and yet it is. At this point, it seems like it's unkillable, and I would expect it to outlast probably everything else in this picture.
We'll see. I mean, that Blu-ray player is the same one they've been selling for 6 years or whatever. So they'll just continue to sell that as a Blu-ray classic. Oh, I can't get out. I really should have taken some screenshots of the UI or some movies of it. However bad you think it is, it's worse.
Well, John, I am genuinely happy for you. I am glad that after a long, arduous 8 years, you are finally in a position to get a brand new television. And it sounds like you aren't going to need to buy one again for a long time.
I really hope not. I kind of feel like when I got my Power Mac G5, I was buying, the first Like people remember there was a big discontinuity with the Power Mac G5 because the G4 was stuck for a really long time with a slow front side bus. And it's like, when are they going to make a tower computer that's worthy of the processor or whatever? And they came out with the G5, which had amazing specs that leaked, but no one believed because they were so amazing. And it was the very first generation of that product. And it had problems and it was weird. Like my power supply chirped and it was, it was like they would work it out. It produced a lot of heat. The fans were a little bit noisy. They would make better G5 tower computers later and eventually much better Intel-based Mac Pros in the same case, right? This is the very first generation Quantum Dot OLED television. There's a Samsung one and there's this one. That's it. And they come in 55 and 65 inch sizes. I'm buying a first generation product. And so that's a little bit scary, but A, I didn't want to wait any longer. And B, I think for our first gen product, unless there's some catastrophic problem that we haven't figured out yet, I'm doing okay. And if this, if I have to replace this television, like if something goes wrong, it turns out the first gen products, they all died after 2 yeyears. I'll just buy another QD OLED, and by then they would have worked out the kinks, and it hopefully won't be as horrendously expensive as this. So I'm living in your future. Someday you all listeners and co-hosts have a Quantum Dot OLED television probably, and you'll like it a lot because it's really nice.
Well, and I think too, first generation, it would be one thing if this was the first OLED, but it's not. It's the first of an evolution of existing technologies. The very first OLEDs probably had significant more problems with like burn-in and stuff like that, or the blue pixels dying more over time or whatever it is. But this is, I would expect this being just a minor evolution, really, of OLED technology. I would expect this to be pretty safe.
Yeah, I mean, they have learned a lot from the other OLEDs, but technologically speaking, this screen just operates differently than the other ones. It has a different backlight, it has different pixel structures and manufactured in a different way. It's learned a lot from the other ones, but the technologies that are in the very best WRGB OLEDs are actually slightly different than this. Like the way they deal with their issues, like I think the new WRGB OLEDs use like deuterium or something to try to like avoid burn-in. Like they have different approaches, whereas this one has defense against burn-in, for different reasons, because it doesn't have to make the backlight as bright because because more of the light gets transmitted, so they can turn the backlight down and they can match the brightness of WRGB OLEDs at a fraction of the power and a fraction of the actual light output because more light actually makes it to your eyeballs. Same thing with like the polarizer and everything, and the pixels being a bit, kind of closer to the surface of the screen, not really, but like looking like that. Because there's less crap between the thing that makes the color and your eyeballs. That's why the viewing angles are good. That's why the color purity is good. There's no white subpixels, so it's just red, green, and blue on all of them. The pixels are in a different arrangement. So if you looked at this next to WRGB OLED, it actually looks significantly different. So there is a potential for this to be catastrophically terrible and me to regret this in 2 years, but I really hope not.
I don't think you will. I think you're going to be very happy with this, probably for longer than you should. Ahem, TiVo. Ahem, all your Mac Pros. Ahem, your last TV.
Can you imagine if they made a 4K TiVo Romeo Pro? Boy, I would love that.
Amazing.
You're the only one left who would buy it.
Yep, just me.
Yep.
But I would pay a lot for it.
Thanks to our sponsors this week, Squarespace, Linode, and Instabug. And thanks to our members who support us directly. You can join at atp.fm/join. And we will talk to you next week.
Now the show is over. They didn't even mean to begin, 'cause it was accidental. Oh, it was accidental. John didn't do any research. Marco and Casey wouldn't let him, 'cause it was accidental. Oh, it was accidental. And you can find the show notes at atp.fm. And if you're into Twitter, you can follow them at CASEYLISS. So that's Casey Liss, MARCOARMENT, Marco Arment, SIRAC, USA Syracuse. It's accidental. They didn't mean to. Accidental. Tech podcast so long.
So forever ago, I put in a thing in the show notes for the after show that I thought we would get to at some point, and we just haven't yet. That's fine. And what I wrote was, is it okay to copy a competitor's API? And I don't remember what specifically got me thinking about this, but I thought about how like Android didn't necessarily copy an API as much as they copied like all of Java. And then, or I probably have the details wrong about that, but you get the idea. And then semi-recently, Cloudflare came out with this R2 thing, which I guess is like an Amazon S3 clone or something like that. And now this is suddenly relevant anew. So, Marco, what you been up to lately?
So the reason I brought this up, or the reason I thought today was good for this, was literally just today, I used an S3 clone service for the first time. And it was our sponsor, Linode. It was their Linode object storage service, which is another S3 clone. Backblaze has their own too. Backblaze B2, it's called, which I've mentioned before, because that's one of the storage backends that you can use with various backup tools for things like Synology backups and things like that. And so what most of these services do is they implement the S3 API with an S3-like service behind it. I don't know. So Linode's seems to be running this software package called Ceph, C-E-P-H. I don't know how many of them are Ceph based or what, but
based on my experience with Ceph, I'd worry about that a little bit. But I can tell you on this. So it's not just services like B2 and this Cloudflare thing. Everybody implements the S3 API. If you buy quote unquote enterprise storage, like you buy like a hardware with a bunch of boxes that you're going to put in your data center from like EMC or Dell or IBM, they also, all those boxes also support the S3 API. It has become the standard storage API across the entire enterprise storage industry. And by the way, when they say we implement the S3 API, they always mean we implement a subset of the S3 API as it existed in whatever we made this. Because the S3 API is always changing and nobody implements all of it. It doesn't matter if you're just doing gets and puts and stuff like that, but the S3 API does not stand still and nobody implements all the features. But it is standardized. This is relevant to the discussion. It is standardized across the entire industry. Everybody implements the S3 API.
For the most part, and you're right, it is always a subset and it is oftentimes outdated. But, frankly, when you look at Amazon's full S3 feature set, there is so much complexity available there that almost no users of it actually need. Now, if you're one of the people who needs it, obviously, great, good for you. But most usage of S3 and its various clone services or compatible services, whatever you want to call them, is that just basic stuff, get, put, list, stuff like that.
But like the million features they have, though, it's kind of like the thing where like you have 1,000 customers, each of which needs 1/1000th of your feature set, and it's spread over the whole thing because those features don't exist for no reason. Companies ask for them. I have this experience on my past job. We wanted features from S3 that S3 didn't provide, and through the magic of giving them millions of dollars for AWS services and waiting several years, those features appeared in S3, and we used them, and it made our lives better. We may be the only people and this is probably in our features, we weren't the only people. I think it's a common thing or whatever, but like every one of those features is in S3 is there because some big company that pays AWS millions and millions of dollars wanted it, and they put it there, and those companies use it, and they're never going to remove it because you've got multi-million-dollar customers using it. But when you're using a third-party thing, like, or I don't know what you want to call it, but like a clone service or whatever, they just implement whatever subset they feel like they want to support, and they're not as big as AWS, and they probably don't have customers paying them $1 million. So, we do the basic file operations, and people are happy. But those things that are in S3 aren't there for no reason.
Oh, no, agreed. It's not for no reason, but but I think it's usually very narrow appeal for most of them. And this is true, most of AWS, like when if you, like me, originally used AWS, in like 2008 or something, or, like back when it was much younger and much simpler, if you look at it today, it's almost unrecognizable with how much complexity there is in various parts of it. But there is a large market for that simpler subset of things. And for most people like me, like, making a web app that uses some kind of, basic storage or something, whatever subset is implemented by these clone services is everything we need plus more. So anyway, the reason I was looking at this is that I've been looking to, with my Overcast servers, I've been looking to both reduce cost if possible and where possible, and also increase resiliency to reduce the amount of headroom I have performance-wise and to reduce the incident of problems that I have to deal with because if things get overloaded or whatever. And so one of the ways I was doing that was kind of taking advantage of S3 as both infinite space and cheap space, and as kind of infinite load capacity for high requested things, and to offload certain high volume requests off of my main infrastructure. Because, I run all these servers at Linode, I have all these app servers, I have a couple of load balancers in front of them, and the more requests I can not even send there, the easier the load is on those servers, and then I can save money on those servers and save resources and have more headroom and stuff like that. So using S3 and also putting Cloudflare in front of it, not CloudFront, not the Amazon CDN, Cloudflare, the entirely separate service.
Do you mean CloudWatch?
No, I mean Cloudflare.
CloudWatch, not Cloudflare, not CloudFront.
And the trick with Cloudflare is that it's a CDN that is flat rate and does not charge you for transfer. It's unlimited, whatever that means in technology. There's always a bunch of asterisks, but it's at least unmetered, seemingly, transfer. You don't pay per byte served. And it's not that expensive. They have a free plan. I'm using the one that's $200 a month, and I'm sending hundreds of gigs. Like, I'm sending much more bandwidth through it than what that would normally buy. It's like hundreds of gigs per day that I'm serving through there. It's a large amount of bandwidth for a $200 a month plan. And frankly, I think I actually could be fine on the free plan. The downside of Cloudflare being your CDN is that its retention is pretty crappy. So you get what you pay for in terms of its cache retention, and so it does have to go back to the origin a lot, which in my case is S3, and you do pay for that. Because Amazon charges you not only some small amount per request, but they also charge you most significantly in transfer costs, whatever.
Egress only, though.
Yes, egress only. But
you can do anything within AWS. It's so many asterisks on how they charge for S3, including data transfer. You have to know where you're sending from, where you're sending to.
Yes. However, and that being said, I think you can look at a lot of Amazon Web Services pricing, and some of it's reasonable. The data transfer, the egress fees are exorbitant. They have very, very healthy profits on those. This is like Apple RAM pricing for transfer.
No, it's different though, because in AWS people don't pay those prices. It's kind of like
I do.
Yes, but if big companies don't pay the prices that you see. Little people who are doing one thing, that's what you pay. But nobody who's a big company pays the prices that you see listed on AWS.
Yeah. So anyway, I'm serving a couple of things here. I'm serving the podcast artwork thumbnails from there. So that way, when you bring up the directory, when you search, those thumbnails load really fast. I'm also, in the latest update of Overcast, I'm serving the kind of like Overcast custom JSON format of episode list data. So the list of episodes that are in a feed in my data format that is sent to the app, that is now being served from the CDN. And the idea here is when a podcast publishes a new episode, that gets updated, and then the server send a push notification to all the copies of the app saying, hey, update this. And then all the copies of the app that are subscribed to that feed all have to pull that same file within a few minutes. So I figured a CDN is perfect for that, because not only will it be faster, but that's a whole bunch of cache hits that won't hit any part of my infrastructure. So it'll save on my end. It'll save those big load spikes, which it does, and it's been great. The downside is that, again, the Cloudflare hit rate is not great because their retention rate isn't very good, because I'm talking hundreds of gigs of data here that are potentially being cached, and they're not going to spend hundreds of gigs of their RAM holding all my data in memory for $200 a month. So that makes sense. I'm not blaming them. It is what it is. So anyway, so I started looking for options that would save money, because I learned. I just started doing all of this in the month of July. It is now August, and my July bill for AWS is comically large, and so it could almost buy John's TV.
Good, nice.
So I'm like, all right, the part of this that was supposed to be saving me money is not working. It's actually now costing me more to host things this way than it was in the old way. So let me revisit the cost angle of this. And so there's a couple of options. So there's apparently a deal between Backblaze and Cloudflare that if you use Backblaze's clone, the B2 service, they don't charge you for bandwidth when it's being sent to Cloudflare. So that's an option that I could use the Backblaze B2 service as my backend instead of S3 and pay no fees in transfer. Another option, which is the one I'm trying first, is Linode, frequent sponsor of the show, including this episode, and the place I host all my servers. And by the way, Linode does not pay for my servers for me. Like, they pay us for their ads, but my account is a regular account that I just pay for. Overcast pays it full price. I don't get any special discounts or anything like that. So I buy a lot of Linode servers, and Linode has their object storage service, which is their S3 clone. It is something like 5 times cheaper than S3, like for the transfer fees. And if I'm reading the docs correctly, I think first it exhausts the transfer that I'm already paying for in my Linode plan, because every Linode server that you buy comes with 2,000 gigs a month or something like that of transfer. And I buy so many servers that I never come close to using all that. I have a massive surplus of transfer every month from Linode that I don't use. So not only is it 5 times cheaper when you are paying per gig, but I think I am actually not going to be paying much at all, because I think I'm going to actually be fitting within my giant surplus that I have from all my servers. So I'm trying that now first. And all this is to say, when I first adopted all of this with my code base over the last month or so, first, I've written against S3 since Tumblr. Like, I've used S3 for a very long time. Tumblr stored every image that people uploaded in S3. So I've written against it using PHP for a very long time. I've been through the various complexities as they, went to their complex ACL system, their complex user system, when they changed the signature method from the old, really basic AWS signature thing to the new, signature version 2. I've gone through all of that. And when I went to go integrate this, I'm like, let me look and, let me make sure, Overcast has been using S3 since its beginning, because I had the file upload feature, but that was using the old V1 signature method and a couple of these 15 line functions I wrote to, just do basic S3 commands. But I thought, well, if I'm going to be building, this significant part of my infrastructure now on S3, let me make sure I'm doing everything the most up-to-date way. That way, I don't have to worry so much about deprecations for a longer time, etc. So I learned about, the various different ways you're supposed to now address S3, including the new signature method. I did all that because I looked at the S3 library for PHP that I'm supposed to be using from them, and it's like 100 files, and it's thousands of lines of code, many thousands of lines of code.
Oh my word!
And it is there because S3 is now this monster of a service inside of Amazon Web Services, which is this monster of a suite of services. It's so far beyond what I need, which literally what I need is get, put, list, delete, and generate authenticated URLs. That's it. What I need is the feature set it had in 2008. I just need that today. I literally don't need anything else. Maybe HTTPS support. That might, and I don't even need that. That's just optional. So anyway, so I see when I look at what I have to do to use their PHP library and the amount of bloat and I look at the code and it's like a middleware factory, and I'm like, I don't even know what half these words mean. And I don't even know what this is doing. The old way of doing this was a 15-line function in my utilities file. Clearly, there has to be a simpler way. So, of course, I wrote my own. Of course, right? It's nobody's surprise.
You?
And I have my entire S3 class that does everything I need to do in the most modern way is 250 lines of code in one file. And the class is just called S3. There's no namespace garbage with PHP's backslashes, all this crap. No, it's just one file called S3, and it's 250 lines, and it's very, very simple, and it does everything, the new signature and everything. Anyway, so all this is to say, of course, I wrote my own, and it took a couple days to do it, but it was totally worth it, in my opinion, for my needs and goals. So when I started deciding, all right, I'm going to try out these clone services and see what works for me, I thought, well, crap, I wrote all of this to the brand new, I guess not brand new, but to the newest, AWS signature v2 and all these new ways of addressing the host name and everything. And I thought, there is no way all these clone services are going to, I'm going to have to rewrite the old method in my new file and figure out how to do it and everything. But I'm like, let me just try it first. And I tried literally just swapping out the host name to, the Linode endpoint, and it just worked. and that was it.
That's because all the stuff you were describing as new was like 5 years ago. It's like it's not that new,
right? But even then, like, you know, that's these. Who knows how long these services have been around? Who knows, like, if, you know, whenever Ceph started, they probably forked it then, and, you know, haven't really updated since. I love user in the chat. Heavy Machinery says I should write my own S3 called Overcast 02. That's fantastic. I totally would. I thought about it. I did, just for my, you know, just for like my own use, just for, you know, cheap hosting reasons.
I kind of did that at my last job.
Yeah, right. I mean, I'm sure this is not an uncommon thing, but anyway,
don't recommend it. Just use S3.
But yeah, so anyway, I think ultimately my needs are simple enough that hopefully I can use one of these other services because the cost is literally, it's like 5 times less or even cheaper. So I'm trying that out. But anyway, I've just, all this is to say, I'm very impressed by how it literally was just like a drop-in replacement. And in fact, all the documentation for these services that say like how to access them, they even tell you just use Amazon's library and just change the endpoint to this one host name, and that's it. So I'm very impressed by so far by Linode Object Storage. I decided not to try Cloudflare R2 because I asked on Twitter and people say there's actually no way to serve files publicly from it that's built in. You have to like write like a Cloudflare worker, which is their own custom type of thing that can run on their CDN endpoint nodes. Which it's a very powerful thing from what I hear, but I don't know anything about it, and I don't want to get into that right now. So I'm not going to do Cloudflare R2. I'm going to try Linode's thing first, and if it doesn't end up working for me, I'll try Backblaze B2. But yeah, very, very impressed by these things so far. As for the original question posed in the show notes of is it okay to copy a competitor's API, with something like this, S3 just became the standard. And then other people made their own alternatives that work with it. Like I don't think that's that bad.
If you asked AWS, I think they'd be happy that this happened. And I mean, so sometimes competitors aren't happy when it happens. It's like, oh, we made this API, it's our thing, you're copying us, you're taking advantage of, like, we did this work in the market to say, hey, here's a storage API, write your application against it. You just copied our API so you can get our customers and they don't have to change their code, right? But the only reason to really be mad about that is if you're afraid that your customers will do a better job than you do at providing an S3 compatible service. So I don't know the history behind this at AWS, but I can tell you that what has actually happened is everybody implemented the S3 API. All these storage vendors that used to have their own proprietary HTTP-based APIs, because they saw S3, well, we'll do our own thing, right? All of them had to add S3 because it became the standard because no one wanted to change their software. But in the end, Amazon still provides the best, most full-featured, highest specs, and often best priced if you're a giant corporation.
Highest priced, at least.
No, the best price, because they send a team of people who are going to be your AWS agents to work with your company. Like in the world of big bucks.
That team of people is not coming to Fire Island.
No, they're not. You do not have a team of people working with you. But if you
get on the ferry.
If you spent a few dozen million more dollars in AWS, you would have a team of people. Anyway. And so Amazon, this has been great for Amazon because it is the de facto storage API standard, and Amazon 100% controls it. So when Amazon adds a feature that enough of its customers want, now Dell has to add that feature too in the next year or two. And by the way, they're always perpetually behind what Amazon is doing because Amazon rolls it out, and you don't find out, Dell and EMC don't find out about it until AWS Invent or whatever, where you hear it announced. And then, like I said, if it's a popular feature, customers get cranky, like, oh, I want to use that cool new feature, but your supposedly S3 compatible API doesn't have it, and then they need to add it. They're always behind, right? And that would be fine if they could beat them on price or performance and stuff, but it's difficult to keep up with AWS. So AWS has control of the API that everyone else essentially is forced to use, and they're always one step ahead of everyone else. And by the way, S3 and AWS are actually pretty good services, like in terms of the specs and features and performance. So I think in the end, I mean, maybe AWS was pissed about this in the beginning and maybe sued some people. I don't know the history behind it. But right now, they're sitting pretty. Like, who wouldn't want it? And it's not even like an industry standard that has a consortium doing it. Amazon can do whatever they want with S3, and everyone else just has to scramble to copy them.
Yeah, and there's so many benefits. Like to just use the tooling, for instance, one of the tools that's been invaluable to me when doing S3 development is Transmit by Panic, which most people know as an FTP app. But Transmit has a ton of other like languages it speaks to servers to interact with them, including the S3 protocol. So you can open up your S3 buckets in Transmit, and it looks like a file system, and you can go and you can browse things, and you can quick look things, and you can edit and delete. And when you're developing an S3 based something, that's actually really useful. And I was able to they have like in their screen to set up a new profile in Transmit. You pick S3 as a protocol, but then you can give it a custom host name. So I just gave it the, US East 1 linodeobjects.com in there, and it's talking to my Linode, object storage, just exactly the same way. Like that's awesome. Like to have all of that tooling support and everything, it's very wonderful as a developer. And as to whether it's okay for the source company, John, you're right about, strategically speaking, it's pretty good for Amazon because the value that they are providing is not the API, it's the service behind it and all the different capabilities and the integration with other AWS services. And that's the value they're providing. So I don't think it really hurts them to have other people offering, competing things for the basics. Because you're right, like they have all these advantages by having this become the industry standard that they are still in full control of, and all of the high end use will still go to them. But then, the low end use like this, it greatly benefits people like me who are more value conscious, and that's pretty great for us at least.
Yeah, you should, most of the value services, if you're trying to undercut AWS on cost, it's hard if you're an enterprise because again they get the fancy enterprise pricing that they don't pay the retail thing. And B, they're just not going to match AWS's specs because they don't have to. If you want to be lower priced, you have to give up stuff. You can't have 800 storage tiers. You can't have 11 nines of data durability, which is what S3 has, right? If you want to save some money, you don't need 11 nines of data durability for your things. I'm assuming you don't. You'd take 7 nines probably. It's plenty of nines for you, right? Some people don't need any nines, and Although AWS has models for that too, that they have the storage tiers where it's only in one location and you don't care if it goes away or whatever. So it's difficult to compete even on the low end, but that's the place where there's possibility. Using Ceph, which is an open source cluster file system, using Ceph as the back end lets you not have to essentially re-implement S3 because some open source thing did. Is Ceph as good as S3? No, it's not. That's absolutely not. But if you want to undercut AWS on price for regular people who aren't giant enterprises and you don't care about all those fancy features and you don't care about the safety and performance, yeah, that's the little niche that these companies can carve out for themselves. And I honestly, when I see a lot of these services, I do wonder how many of them are just front ends for S3. And you would think, how is that possible? How can they undercut S3's pricing?
Volume discounts.
Right. Exactly. Because you pay them what you think is less than the manufacturer suggested retail price for the service you're getting, but they pay S3 you are a multi-million-dollar corporation price. And so they're just,
that's pretty funny.
Just skimming off the top, and they're essentially giving you access to their, enterprise company discount to S3. But saving a little bit for themselves. I don't know if any of them are doing that. It's just that is a plausible thing that could be done.
That's amazing.
That is kind of amazing.
The magic of enterprise pricing. The world of enterprise software and corporate services is really weird.